This is Comic Geeks Peak, episode 1552, book of the month on The Infinity Gauntlet. I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Brian Deemer.
I'm Chris Eberly.
I'm Bill Ellis.
And I'm Danny O'Brien.
And welcome to the show.
Keep it going. Just play it in the background all night.
Professionalism right out the window.
Yeah, thought I'd turned it off. Anyway, welcome to the show. It is a long time in coming as we finally cover, the holy grail of Marvel Cosmic, the Infinity Gauntlet story, here on our Book of the Month series of episodes. And it's going to be kind of an atypical installment of Comic Geek Speak for a couple of reasons, because this is our first ever vidcast episode.
Huzzah!
Yeah, I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and finally giving it a shot.
Yeah, by the sweat of Brian's own brow. There are now camera placements all around us, all around the studio, and some brand new light fixtures overhead, too.
We must acknowledge the efforts of our glorious, fabled founder.
Hear, hear.
And also, of course, all the listeners who pitched in.
Yeah, this wouldn't not be possible if it wasn't for the generous audience, so thank you very much for allowing me to tinker.
And it looks like it made you clean the table a little bit.
I tried. I did. There's a lot more cleaning that has to be
Yeah.
done. It was way too much to set up all the equipment and clean in about 8 hours. Not enough time.
No.
So we're going to have like a Saturday or Sunday fest where we all come in and just, for hours.
You should have Billy.
Oh,
He's a super
I'm gonna
cleaner.
come in.
Bill's a
I'm gonna do
magnificent,
it.
industrious
He really
cleaner.
is.
I get in there.
You're going to just
He's a scrubber.
Yeah.
do we go to town? All right, Pants. We'll see you.
Ciao, pantaloons.
Pants is off. You can hear him laughing as he goes out the door. All right. Suppose before we get any further, we need to pay do homage to our sponsors for this episode. This episode of Comic Geek Speak on the Infinity Gauntlet is brought to us by Scribd. Scribd is like Netflix for comics. With a subscription, you'll get access to more than 10,000 comics from Marvel, IDW, and Top Shelf, Valiant, Dynamite, Archie, and more. They're the only subscription service that gives you that variety, all for one monthly price. On top of that, you'll also get unlimited access to their huge library of ebooks and audiobooks. More than 1 million titles altogether, all available anytime, anywhere. Head over to scribd.com/comicgeekspeak to get started with a free month. Even more importantly, Scribd makes sure you can find your way to comics and books you're going to love. They've got hundreds of collections curated by their team of editors, and as you read, they'll tailor recommendations for you based on other titles you've loved or not loved. Go to scribd.com/comicgeekspeak right now, and they'll set you up with a free month to get started. That's 30 days of unlimited reading, and you'll be supporting this show, so it's a win-win situation. That's scribd.com/comicgeekspeak. And this episode is also brought to you by Geek Nation Tours. Geek Nation Tours is off to New York, Comic Geek style. They will be headed not only to the uber-awesome New York Comic Con, but also will be exploring NYC through a geek's eyes. Tour participants will see the regular NYC tourist locations, like Hell's Kitchen, Central Park, and Times Square, but they will also stop by the fictional address of the Fantastic Four, the place where Uncle Ben was shot, and even the Frick Museum, which was the inspiration for the Avengers Mansion, the Daily Bugle, and so much more. They will even be hitting a couple of comic book stores like Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash, as seen on AMC's Comic Book Men. So the tour will be Tuesday, October 6th to Monday, October 12th. What is included? All accommodations, all transfers, entry fee to the New York Comic Con, Top of the Rock viewing area, the New York by Foot tour, all taxes, a Metro Pass, a welcome dinner, a dinner in Hell's Kitchen, lunch at downtown, farewell dinner, free hotel Wi-Fi, exclusive Geek Nation tours, and New York Comic Con bowling shirt. So there you are, Geek Nation tours.
Okay, question. Where did Uncle Ben die? Do they actually give you the address? And when you go, does everyone get to take their turn lying on the ground and get their photo taken with a chalk outline?
Yeah, they'll have like a permanent streaming webcam like the Abbey Road.
It must be a house in Forest Hills, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. Or possibly, maybe it's where he was killed in the Spider-Man movie.
In the movie, okay.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
So, thank you very much, Geek Nation Tours.
And thank you, Adam, for your lovely readings.
Anytime, any place. All right, so now, ready to get down to brass tacks here?
Adam, I'm looking forward to this for months. Not only to discuss this, because I've read this book. I've read this book 3 times in my life. Once, many, many years ago. I read it twice this year just to refresh. And I just want to hear you hold forth on, for example, eternity. So I'm looking forward. And since Daniel and Bill both read this for the first time,
And with very little context.
yes, they shall be say will have a different perspective, which I look forward to hearing as well. So
No pressure on me here, because I don't know for certain that I'm not going to be more on their side than everyone else's, because
that remains to be seen.
because I've read Infinity Gauntlet exactly as many times as you have, Chris.
All right.
Yeah, because I really, as we'll see here, and as longtime listeners of CGS know, I've got a much stronger soft spot for its sequel, The Infinity War, than I have for the Infinity Gauntlet event itself.
And you're a Marvel Cosmic aficionado in general.
There
so-
was a sequel to this?
Oh, yes.
2 of them.
2 of them.
Look in the back of the book. There's an advertisement.
Check it
for
out.
Trades.
As a matter of fact, what I've got here, and I can show it to the cameras. Hey, look, there's visuals now. Yeah, this is the library-bound copy of the Infinity Trilogy that Matt had made for me a while ago. So it's got the Infinity Gauntlet, all 6 issues of that, all 6 issues of the Infinity War, all 6 issues of the 3rd installment, Infinity Crusade, plus the issue of New Avengers, the Illuminati, that had to do with the Infinity Gems, and an issue of Marvel Age magazine that had to do with Infinity Crusade that Matt had lying around and I guess didn't want anymore. He put it in here for me. So this was a present from Matt a while ago, and it's got a place of honor on my bookshelf. And it's what I'm going to be using as we go through here to talk about the actual text. I'll be referring to actual bound individual issues complete with the original advertisements.
And to jump in on the multimedia front for a second, I'm also glad we're doing this because it's likely that some elements of this will show up in the final Avengers film, is my guess.
Quite likely.
So I think it's also good we're addressing it for that possibility.
That's true, which is going to be called Infinity War, but
Right.
I'm sure it's going to bear a stronger resemblance to Infinity Gauntlet. I don't think the Magus is likely to show up.
Yeah.
Now, I have the issues because I got
Purist.
these.
Very good.
I bought these off the shelf as they were coming out, 1991. That's the last time I read it.
Really?
I never revisited it, and because it took me way longer to in here today, I've read an issue and a half. So I'm not going to be contributing quite as much as I was hoping, but I'll sort of riff off of whatever you guys put out and ask some questions and whatever.
But my friend, between that wonderful fleshy greeting you gave us in the parking lot, combined with your presence here right now, I mean, you are a tonic for the spirit. So you could just be silent; it wouldn't matter because you just radiate power.
We'll see about that.
You sighted a small moon, eh? That's no moon.
Pants was off
It's
in more
Brian
than one
Tina's
sentence.
ass.
That's a long-standing CGS tradition that hasn't been revisited for a while, so I needed to.
We were
Bringing
honored
it
to be the
back.
recipients of the renewal of that tradition. Then,
Yeah, you just caught me at the right time.
shall we start with our initial reflections? Then I assume.
Okay.
Please, Adam.
Am I to go first?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, again, as I guess it's worthwhile to say certain things that are well known to longtime CGS listeners over again, since some people might be seeing this on YouTube for the first time. But I got into comics back in 1992, and it was the Infinity War miniseries, the sequel to the story we'll be talking about in this episode. That was my introduction to comics. It was my gateway drug. Yes, Matt once again showed me his copies of the first 2 issues, I think, and I read them and was intrigued and ended up buying all 6 issues of that series and all the crossovers.
So Matt really was your pusher then.
He absolutely was. Yes, and only the first ones were free, as I learned. But so, I was kind of shanghaied into the press gang of comics fandom. With the Infinity War as the blackjack that caught me on the back of the head. But it was actually a few years before I actually sought out the issues of the Infinity Gauntlet miniseries that started it all, the beginning of the Infinity Trilogy. I kind of took my time about gathering those back issues because I felt like reading Infinity War told me most of what I needed to know about the plot. Thanos had gathered the 6 Infinity Gems, formed the Infinity Gauntlet, and used it to become god of the Marvel Universe. And he pontificated, and he plotted and planned and schemed and stewed and simmered and wanted Death to love him, but Death didn't love him. And a bunch of heroes got together and came up with a couple of strategies to get the gauntlet away from him, which ultimately worked with a little help from Thanos' subconscious, and it ended up with Thanos being on a backwater world living the life of a farmer, and that's where Infinity War picked up, actually, right from there. So it took me a while before I actually got around to reading the magnum opus that got the Infinity Trilogy touched off. And when I finally did read it, I thought it was good. But, to this day, I know this is an unpopular position. Nostalgia may play a part in it, but to this day, I still like Infinity War better. Because, the Infinity Gauntlet, it's a great cosmic story, and it's got artwork by George Perez for a few issues. It's got art by Ron Lim for a few other issues. Something of a jarring transition, and I've heard from a couple of folks on the CGS forums, as we'll see shortly. I'll be reading some comments from our listeners on the CGS forums about this. Some people who were reading this when it came out thought it was even more jarring, reading it monthly off the rack when Perez was replaced by Lim. But
Was Perez replaced because he just had too many other things he had to do, or would we not know the reason why?
To this day, I am not certain of that reason. The reason is probably well documented, but I just do not know what the reason was. He probably had a good excuse, Perez did, but I myself think that Lim was a good substitution. I mean, he'd been doing the Silver Surfer series,
sure.
the artwork there. He drew the Thanos Quest miniseries that was like the prequel to the Infinity Gauntlet. So if you're going to replace Perez with anyone, he was the logical choice. His art is not quite as good as Perez's, I personally think, but I to this day, I love Ron Lim's artwork almost as much as Perez's, and he was, I think, a natural successor.
Well, when you think of Marvel Cosmic in the 80s and early 90s, you think of Ron Lim.
Absolutely.
Because of that Silver Surfer work. So.
Well, and because of this, too.
Yeah.
Because after drawing like the second half of Infinity Gauntlet, he went on to draw all of Infinity War and Infinity Crusade. So yeah, that just sort of solidifies the reputation of which you spoke a moment ago as like the premier Marvel cosmic artist of that time period. So yeah, the story, I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about comparisons between Infinity Gauntlet and Crisis, because I think that's probably what some people watching this are going to be expecting of me, since Crisis is sort of my area of specialty. To that I say there's really not that much in the way of similarity. The major similarity is that there's a major threat, like a massive cosmic scale threat posed to all life, or at least 50% of life, in a superhero universe, being perpetrated by a cosmically empowered master villain. And George Perez is drawing it. And that's kind of where I personally feel the similarity ends.
I agree with you.
I mean, this... I don't know how much detail I should get into here, because everybody else has to give their initial impressions, but let's just say that I think that this is kind of a more intimate apocalypse story than Crisis ever was. I mean, it's more the story of it's more like a Thanos character arc than it is like a reality bending. And unlike Crisis, this was not really put out there for the purpose of overhauling a superhero universe. It's really it's a story about Thanos, his flaws, his foibles, how his mind works, and how other heroes, particularly Adam Warlock, rise in response to the threat that he poses. And it also it's kind of a meditation on omnipotence, which, for young adolescents who are all about power fantasies and dreaming of imposing their sovereign will on all of reality. And, I was 12 when this came out and 13 when Infinity War came out. So I was just the right age, I think, for something like this to really appeal to me. But to this day, the Infinity Gems remain among my favorite things about superhero comics. Just the notion of gathering these bright, shiny baubles, which appeals to the collector's spirit. And just once you collect them all, you will have power to reshape reality to suit your whims. You can't deny the appeal of the concept. As for the story itself, it's the best example of, cosmic melodrama and carefully choreographed fantasy violence this side of the WCW. Yeah, and really, when it comes to early '90s cosmic stories, it's hard not to draw comparisons between this and professional wrestling. But it's cosmic space opera. It's a little on the bombastic side. That's Starlin's trademark. It's just jolly good fun, and I'm glad that we're having an opportunity to read it again, revisit the stuff that was most important to me as a young comics fan, just beginning my journey along comics reading and collecting. And I'm interested to hear what everyone else has to say. And I will now shut up and give them a chance to say so.
The first thing I noticed was I was surprised when I saw that it was a $2.50 cover price. I was like, wow, I really paid $2.50.
It's 48 pages.
I mean, I know that it's jumbo size, but it seems like it was so long ago. Like we were paying such small prices, but that's 24 years ago, and we were still paying, $2.50. And comics now, there's still a couple comics that are $2.99. So this was like hella expensive back then.
That's true. It's a good point. Yeah.
Even if it is double size, you still have to pay $2.50. So it's interesting. Like when you start to get older, that you forget that things weren't. Your sense of time changes. You lose it and you can't remember everything in proper order anymore. $2.50 for a comic in 1991.
You're pushing us all to salinity very quickly, my friend.
Just wait till we get to the dialogue. Yeah. Well, the other thing that's interesting for me is I didn't read any of the prelude stuff that happened. And in fact, this was more or less probably my first foray into Marvel Cosmic at all, other than the cheesy Guardians of the Galaxy that came out. When was that? Maybe 9...
That was around the same time.
Right around the same time, right? Yeah. So I randomly read that. I don't know why. So I didn't know any of these characters or any of the storylines leading up to this, and I don't remember being confused. And as I'm rereading this, I'm going, "What the hell is going on?" Like I don't even know what the hell's happening in this story because it's so obtuse, which is, I guess, Starlin's sort of signature, right? But I don't remember any of that. I remember like, "Oh, there's Thanos and the Infinity Gems," and like you start off the book and he's already got all of them. Like, I thought, I remembered this whole story where he was getting them one by one, and then then he had ultimate power. He starts the book with ultimate power.
That's true. Well, that's the Thanos Quest limited series I was talking about.
Right, but I never read that. So how the hell would I was just...
Wow.
In the 24 years since I read this, my brain turned the story into Thanos finding the gems, and then the last issue or two fighting all the guys. Like, it's crazy. I just made all that up. You cannot trust my memory at all.
I would say that some parallel universe version of you read those 2 issues and transmitted the memories to you across dimensional barriers just to save you the cover price.
I think that's actually more likely. And somehow they were in my comic collection.
You were sent a digital copy via brainwaves.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know you still had a comic collection left.
Yeah, a little bit. And for
All
some reason, I decided to keep these because I was like, I should read those again.
Yeah.
Because it's been so long. I'll keep them. And I still haven't read them all again. Yeah.
Still, though, I'm glad that the very few comics you chose to keep, though those are among them. I'm glad those made the cut.
Anything else you want to say at this point, sir?
Go
All
right
right. So I read this 20 years ago, probably, when it was relatively new. So I had no memory of it. And when we discussed that we're going to do that, we're going to do Infinity Gauntlet this year, in the summer, I made a point of taking a trade from my inventory at the shop and reading it. And then I read it again just yesterday, just to have it very fresh in my mind. And a couple things struck me right off the bat. One, I can easily see how the allure of the gems and the gauntlet can really work in the build-up they're showing us in the films right now, because they're clearly collecting all these different artifacts, so to speak. And I'm interested to see what, if anything, they're going to take from this story when we get to the culminating sort of chapter of the Avengers saga in the films. Because you think they're building towards something having to do with the gems and the gauntlet. So I'm just interested to see what, if anything, they take from this story. Reading this again, the Perez art is gorgeous, and that was just a sheer feast to enjoy that. And I do it like Murd. I do enjoy Ron Lim. I think he's a very solid artist. And I just nostalgia. I just remember reading all the Silver Surfer comics when I was a kid, and how much I love those. So that was really fun. I will say this: reading this again just twice in the past several months, I enjoy this story. I think writing wise, it's a little dated in some ways. I don't. Daniel and I were talking about this in the car. I think if I had read this for the first time, and I just don't remember when I was, 16, 17, 18 years old, this probably would have been the bee's knees to me. And now reading it again as a middle-aged man, I still really enjoyed it. But I think the concept of the story, and it's very much the concept of Thanos, I think is one of the most compelling villains in all of the Marvel Universe, has had more of an impact on me than actually what happens to some degree in the story. Having said that, obviously spoilers here, but when you see Thanos basically slaughter the bulk of the Marvel heroes, I can imagine to readers at that time how shocking that must to see Iron Man decapitated, right? To see Spider-Man beaten to death, to see Cyclops asphyxiated, and that Gesundheit, my dear, and to see like Galactus and all the great cosmic entities of, let's say, the fabric of the Marvel Universe basically laid low by Thanos. That's very powerful. And I really am interested to see if they're going to take those elements and put them in these films. Because to a general mass audience that has not read these stories, that would be very shocking to a movie audience to see the heroes. We would know that they're going to come back, but to see them killed like that easily. And I hope, and this book, really emphasizes how powerful Thanos really is. Really, no one really has any chance against him whatsoever. I'm interested to see in the movie universe how far they're going to go with that. So, this was a real fun read to revisit again. But I think my 18, 16, 17-year-old self would have been even more enraptured by it. Now I look at and I enjoy it more as an historical, important piece of work. But still immensely. And looking forward to asking you, Adam, some questions. I want to do our initial roundtable. I need a refresher on Adam Warlock as well.
I'll do what I can to answer them.
Excellent.
'Cause I did finally get around to reading Starlin's Warlock run.
We saw it on your nightstand at your summer home in Stone Harbor.
Yep. Bible on top and Warlock right below it.
Well, he is a Christ figure, essentially.
Absolutely he was, yeah.
Sir William Ellis.
Oh my goodness! I think Danny and I are probably going to go at the same time because we have a largely similar viewpoint on this, which I think was we read it completely unmoored from Marvel continuity and the feeling at the time. I don't know. I've never read anything leading up to it. I've never read anything following it. Well, I've read things after it.
Yeah, and at the time when it came out, I was 11. I wasn't even reading comics, and you were young.
Yeah, I probably wasn't born yet.
No. You were 7.
I don't remember. And it was silly.
Yeah.
It was really silly.
I can, like Chris was saying, reading it, I guess, at, 16 or 17, or even if I read it at 12 or 13 when I started reading comics, I might have liked it, but reading it at my age now, I was 2 issues in. I texted Bill last night and went, so this whole book is Thanos throwing a temper tantrum because death doesn't love him? Like, you're going to destroy the universe because the lady you love doesn't like you. Wow. That's exactly what the plot was.
Yeah. But think about how many wars and stuff have been fought because of, love.
That is true.
Right? I mean, I don't think it's far-fetched at all.
No, but it just, to me, I was like, ugh, I was bored by it.
But this, a war involves lots of people. This book could have been called, like, Thanos Throws a Tantrum.
Yes, it should have been.
It could have been. And I don't know, maybe they were thinking of it like that.
The Infinity Tantrum. Like,
yeah.
it has a ring.
He was a big baby in that book. And, like, this is I have very little context of Thanos. I saw his appearance in the movies. He looked really scary in the movies. I haven't actually read that much Marvel space stuff, so I don't have a lot of context for the character. But if I'm just going off this book, yeah, he's petulant.
He's a petulant little child.
Thanos is I'm sorry. Thanos is really one of the most terrifying villains in the Marvel universe because he's essentially a demigod who worships death.
Right.
And when you should read the recent Jason Aaron Thanos origin book.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
First issue of that.
Yeah,
that actually was really good.
He's scary.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also I should point out that I'm not big on cosmic stories.
Oh.
Like, I really don't like cosmic stories. It's just not my cup of tea. So this book kind of bored me because I just kept going, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Because it's not something I would probably enjoy in general. Maybe even at 12, I probably been like, I don't understand what half this stuff is.
There are elements of the story that I really, really did enjoy. When I first sat down to read it, I think my favorite part was the deeply personal way that most of the heroes and characters were describing the events that were happening. And so you get these scenes where like heroes are just flying around basically helpless to stop the utter destruction of the Earth. The scene with Namorita, where she's
Atlantic City.
where she's
That's
like,
powerful,
and I saved those two because I have 2 arms.
Or Thor realizes Japan is just gone as he
Yeah.
flies over the ocean. Yeah.
It's there. Those are really powerful, really moving elements to the story, and they feel like they put me in the mind of Jim Kruger's Earth X, where you get a lot of stuff directly from the characters' mouths.
And I think, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think because we're reading it in present day, we know all these heroes are alive now. So it's not like it had that deep of an impact when I was reading. I was like, well, I know they're all alive. So, but I imagine when you were reading it issue to issue, there was a big difference.
Well, maybe not. I think even like most early adolescent readers at the time probably figured out, okay, he just killed Spider-Man.
Yeah.
There's no way that's going to last.
But the thing is that you usually, or I should say often, when there's sort of these mass extinctions, there's always one that stays dead, at least for a few years, right? So you're reading this, and it's a month until the next issue comes out, and you're like, oh my God, who's really dead, or whatever, or how many are dead? And then you find out eventually who's dead. Like in one of the fairly recent events, there was, I should just shut up.
For you.
I can't remember. Somebody died, and they actually stayed dead for a while.
That was like when I used to work in the video stores in the 90s. People would come and ask me for a movie, and they just say, do you know that movie with that guy in it?
Did they really actually do that? Like
Oh,
that?
yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
That's true. That wasn't made up in Clerks. That happened.
It was a Marvel event. I don't know.
Did you know the movie?
Forget it.
I tried to
thinking
fake
of Goliath in Civil War.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Well done, Billy.
This is not the Bill.
Boom! Nailed it. That movie with that guy.
you
in
should
it.
go work at the video store.
I should.
Do they have video stores anymore?
No, they don't.
They're gone.
Oh, I'm antiquated.
You can stand next to a red box.
Which one were you looking for? Allow me to tap the screen.
That's true. He
believe I
has
got that.
stayed dead thus far.
Yeah.
This is Bill Foster, right?
Yeah, it was originally called Black Goliath in the Bronze Age.
Yes, right. And eventually he became Giant Man.
Yes.
Funnily enough, Bill, that's the same death I was thinking of, too.
Okay. That one always struck me because I loved the scene with the gigantic grave. And the
See, that
funeral.
clutch moment is one of the many reasons Bill is a manager of Wild Pick Comics, because he always delivers. Love you, honey. Sorry, Murd, go ahead.
No, I wasn't trying to push things forward, but has everyone?
I think we've given our
offered their-
introductory reflection.
Ricky, you're good?
All right.
Ricky's just witnessing. He's not speaking.
All right.
the watcher.
He's our
Ricky,
auditor.
thumbs up or thumbs down?
A tentative and sort of inclined thumbs up.
Well, there's video. The video.
Yeah, I actually saw his thumb on.
There
I
you
can't
go.
see his body, but we saw his thumb.
Yeah, the gauge is wobbling a little bit.
Awesome.
All right, so which direction do we want to go here? We have all of time, space, mind, power,
Why don't we
soul, and
start-
reality at our
Why don't we
disposal
start with
here.
this? Why don't you just remind the audience and some of us the origin and power of the gems?
All right. Originally, there was but one known to readers of Marvel Comics. Okay, this was introduced, I'm pretty sure, during Roy Thomas's run on The Power of Warlock, when the character formerly known as Him introduced in the...
It was a brief Bronze Age series.
Right, right. Yeah, so Him was introduced in the Lee Kirby Fantastic Four.
Right.
He became Adam Warlock. That's when Roy Thomas tried to do his Jesus Christ Superstar in outer space shtick with Warlock. He was on Counter Earth with the High Evolutionary, and that is where he was given this green magic gem that he wore on his forehead, the Soul Gem. And eventually we became aware over time that there were a few other Soul Gems like this out there in the Marvel Universe. And then Thanos, well, there was a big story with Thanos and Warlock in the early 80s. I think it was an Avengers-related story in which they both died.
That involved a Marvel 2-in-1 annual. There was an Avengers annual that was also part of that story. I'm forgetting the numbers. Forgive me, but
Yeah, and I never knew the numbers to begin
but
with.
they're very famous issues.
Those famous Starlin cosmic chessboard imagery on the covers. Yep. But then we're told eventually, and I think this happened in the Starlin written, the few Starlin written issues of the Silver Surfer that came out. Not too many months before Infinity Gauntlet. We learned that Thanos has been resurrected. And we also learn in time, I think it was in the Thanos Quest miniseries, actually, we learn that he was resurrected by Death herself, his lover, who's decided that he's just too useful a vassal to allow to languish in Death's realm. So she resurrects him and gives him to know that she doesn't talk to him directly. We see this in Infinity Gauntlet, but at this point she does not deign to speak to him. At first because he's too far below her, but later because he's too far above her. And so she has these two dead flunkies, a zombie and a rat man, who tell Thanos what she's thinking. And he is told that he must kill half the intelligent beings, well, half the life forms, intelligent or otherwise, in the universe in order to prove his worth to Death, whether as servant or lover. And Thanos, of course, agrees to take on this challenge. But he's gazing into Death's Infinity Well, this big scrying pool in Death's citadel. And it's there that he learns that these soul gems that he's had brushes with before, that he's seen glittering on his old friend and enemy's brow, Adam Warlock, because the two of them have been allies and they have been bitter opponents. They're kind of a yin and yang thing. They're two sides of the same coin, cosmic duality, that kind of stuff. Starlin was big on that sort of thing. So he learns that there was more to these gems than he had ever suspected. He learns that they were possibly tiny bits of the life essence or the cosmic corpse of a godlike being that had been, the alpha and omega of a prior universe. God would not have been an inappropriate term to use to describe this being. But it willed itself out of existence untold eons ago, and these gems are the only bits of its carcass that remain. And there are 6 of them, he learns, and each of them has the power to manipulate and control, or allow its owner to manipulate and control different aspects of reality. The one that Warlock had was the one of the gems that controlled the sort of nebulous element of the soul, that which defines intelligent, sentient thinking and feeling beings, as opposed to, inorganic matter. But since that was the only one that was known, it was known as the Soul Gem, and it was assumed that the few others of these gems that were seen in Marvel Comics were also Soul Gems. It wasn't until the Thanos Quest miniseries that Thanos came up with another name for them. Since he thought, they don't all control the soul, why don't we just come up with a different umbrella title for the whole set and call them the Infinity Gems? And so he said, it was in that Thanos Quest miniseries that he set about gathering these gems, which had all fallen into the possession of various elders of the universe. So that's, if you really want a little more insight into Thanos' character before he became the god of whining, the jilted god, the high school unrequited crush god, you should probably check out Thanos Quest, actually, which is... it's going to be a little hard to find these days, I think, since everything Thanos is heating up on the back issue market, But I bought mine in Ottawa.
I think that was a 2-issue prestige format edition.
Yes,
wasn't it?
it came out in 1990, the year before Infinity Gauntlet. I bought mine at the Silver Snail comic shop in the spring of 1998. $2 Canadian apiece. And so that series shows Thanos going around tracking down the various elders of the universe who have the different gems, and just doing either tricking them or just thrashing them or doing anything he had to do, bearing in mind the individual personalities, strengths, and weaknesses of the elders that have these gems to beg, borrow, steal, or whatever else he needed to do to get these things away from their current owners. And each of them have a different property. All right, so Adam Warlock's was the Soul Gem. As I said, it had, that one, above all the others, had its own sort of malign intelligence. It was kind of sentient, and it pushed Adam Warlock to act as kind of a psychic vampire, to suck souls of intelligent beings into it while he was wearing it. So there's kind of this little pocket dimension inside of the Soul Gem, and that is where Adam Warlock is. He and his friends Pip the Troll and Gamora, the green-skinned girl, at the beginning of all of this, who was actually the adopted daughter of Thanos, was raised by Thanos. That doesn't really come up in this story, but
and is now a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly, yes. So that's the Soul Gem. The Power Gem is the one that kind of fuels all of the others, and it controls force, energy, all the sort of principles of physics, universal constants, anything that can give power to anything else. I've never taken a physics class in my life, so maybe my vocabulary isn't the best to explain exactly what this gem can do, but power. Then there's the Mind Gem, which controls mentality, thought. It allows the bearer to sense the thoughts, individual or collective, of all other beings in the universe. And then there's space, which well, in the hands of a lesser adept allows you to teleport across to any point in creation. Also to manipulate space, fold it in on itself. Who are we missing? The time gem allows you to time travel or to alter time. And finally, the reality gem, which kind of trumps all the others, but you almost need to have all the others in place to regulate the reality gem. Trying to use it on its own is kind of a dangerous thing to attempt, as we learn in one of the crossovers from the Infinity War, when a certain character tries to use the reality gem on its own and nearly destroys himself.
Now, Adam, must you use this specific gauntlet?
No, there is nothing special about the gauntlet.
That was my question.
Yeah, the gauntlet is just one of Thanos' gloves.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a special artifact in and of itself. It's just he had the idea to get all these. Once he had them, he needed to wield them somehow.
Right.
So this was the setting he chose to put them in. It was most convenient to have them on his person somewhere. And since in comics we usually tend to associate energy manipulation with either the eyes or the hands,
Right.
you could either make the infinity bifocals or the infinity pince nez or something.
Glasses.
Or, the Infinity Opera glasses, exactly. Or the Infinity Lorgnette.
That's what the Mormons have, right? No, that's something different.
But no, you can accessorize with the Infinity Gems, so you can do whatever you want with it. The Infinity Miter.
I want an infinity tiara.
Okay, done.
That's what I want. That's what I want for my birthday.
Yep, you won't give her your chair, but you will give her a tiara that will let her alter
That was
reality.
a really comfortable chair.
Just so we've got our priorities straight. Okay, but in answer to your question, it's just Thanos' glove. Nothing special about it except that the gems were on it for a time.
Thank you, brother.
In the movies, what gems have we seen?
Well,
Or do you think we've seen?
do we think? Well, I don't know. Theories kind of vary as to which of the artifacts from the various Marvel movies correspond to which gems. I think it's safe to say that the Tesseract from the first Avengers movie was probably going to be the space gem.
That seems.
Yeah, even though it's blue and the space gem is supposed to be purple. And then the red thing from Thor: The Dark World, I'm assuming that's power. Other people have speculated it might be reality. It's kind of hard to say. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing that the thing that showed up in the Guardians of the Galaxy most recently is going to turn out to be the time gem, because it causes people to age rapidly. And I think because one of my theories about that movie was that Star-Lord is actually the son of Star Fox, which means that he has the blood of Eternals flowing through his veins, which means that he has a much longer lifespan than most beings do, which is why this purple thing didn't superannuate him quite as quickly as it did some other
I
characters.
think that's a brilliant theory, Merd, because when you also think about shall we say, the seductive wiles Star-Lord was employing with women, even Gamora almost fell prey to his power. So Star Fox, I think, is a great theory.
A little of the old
And it would
man's
tie him
mojo.
into Thanos' family history as well if they pursue that. So
Well, I hope I'm right. And the thing that Loki had in his staff in the Avengers movie is almost certainly the mind gem.
Yeah, I've heard people think that's a gem, but then I was reading that I don't think it's been confirmed that is a gem. But I thought it was a gem.
It seems like a gem.
I thought so.
It was very nice.
Shiny.
should we plunge into the first issue?
Oh, sure.
All right.
Let's go for it. And the first issue is succinctly entitled God.
I'd forgotten when I opened this up just that this was the first image. Kind of an Eisner-esque
Oh, yeah.
art page.
Absolutely.
Very
yeah.
much
It doesn't
so.
get much more Eisner than that.
And plus he's incorporating the credits for the creators are carved into the rocks in the foreground of the panel.
Oh, yeah. Even on the page before that, though, I just wanted to remark on the quality of the lettering. And I don't know if this would have been Perez drawing this, where it says Stan Lee presents the Infinity Gauntlet in kind of a Star Wars type
That's true, yeah.
lettering style there. I don't know if that's Perez or Jack Morelli who did the lettering who was one of my favorite comic book letterers because he's
Jack was the colorist. This was.
no,
Oh,
he
no.
was the letterer.
Oh yeah, never mind. It looked.
Max Shield with Ian
Yep.
Laughlin were the
Yeah,
colors.
He lettered the whole Infinity trilogy, and he was the first letterer whose style I've learned to recognize when I saw it. To this day, it's one of very few lettering styles that I know on sight. Very big and splashy.
Well, if Pants were here, no doubt he'd be talking about the original art value of some of these covers and pages. And this is an educated guess. I would imagine these original art pages still have the dialogue balloons on them
Oh yeah.
because
yeah,
they weren't doing the
That's
computer
not-
stuff in the
that's
early
not-
'90s. So,
No.
which I mean, I love getting my hands on an original art page that still has word balloons. That's always a thrill because they're very expensive and harder to find.
If I can just go back to the
Sure.
Godstone thing, it's not just the title, it's part of the comic because on the next page it explodes.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's there. It's
a
diegetic.
really nice mix of it's a title and it's an element of the story and everything. Yeah.
Demonstration of Thanos' power and the status he now holds in the Marvel Universe.
I love how right from the beginning, you're questioning how deranged has Thanos become because he's entrusting Mephisto to be his advisor, the Lord of Deceit. I mean, that doesn't bode well right from the get-go.
Is
True.
that pairing ever explained? Why Mephisto is there? Or I mean, I understand at the end he tries to then steal the Infinity Gauntlet, but I wasn't sure if there was a backstory between those two characters hooking up.
Not necessarily. I mean, Thanos has killed a lot of people over the years, which has helped to expand Mephisto's domain too.
Okay.
So that might be something. But really, I think it's mainly just self-preservation that's brought Mephisto to Thanos' side to grovel and scrape. But really, you got to enjoy though Mephisto's role in this. For the first few issues before he shows his true colors a little too soon and ends up as part of the statuary garden with all the other
Yes.
cosmic beings. But while it lasts, you got to love his self-serving performance as this crawling, fawning cosmic sycophant.
I love on the next page, again, I'm such a huge fan of Perez's work, the Doctor Strange, where he incorporates his cape into sort of that astral image, and then the window, that famous window on the ceiling of the roof of his sanctum. Beautiful artwork. I mean, God, I love Perez. Just magnificent.
Oh, yes.
And I can, and in no way am I disparaging Ron Lim, but I can see our readers might have been jarred by moving from this style to the Ron Lim style later on.
You know what's
in the
weird?
book.
I was not jarred at all. Like I thought it.
Well,
it
you were
looked
barely
so-
hanging on with the whole story by that point
It's
anyway.
True. It's true. Maybe it
As
wasn't.
we were reading through.
Yeah, but I mean, I was like, oh, new person. But I thought the styles matched. I thought they did a good job matching it. It wasn't. I didn't think it was like, oh my goodness, like going from, I don't know, Jim Lee to someone else who's completely different style. I thought they were still similar in nature.
Yeah, I think if Lim had to take over for Perez at some point, that was probably the right the right point in the story for him to lay his visuals on things. I mean, in the early going here, I mean, going back to what Bill said earlier about how character-driven some of these moments are, how it's I have right here at the top line of my notes. This is a more intimate cosmic conflict than, say, Crisis on Infinite Earths, because it does reach into the characters' minds and let them will show us the story from their point of view.
Yeah, they're sort of telling the story almost after the fact, or at least simultaneously with the.
And
with
during the
event.
climactic battle, Star Fox is the narrative voice, essentially, giving the point of view for the reader. So.
Yeah, so Starlin just laying all of this on first-person narration instead of the omniscient point of view you might expect from something like this. It's an interesting choice, and the Perez illustrating. I think he does this kind of storytelling better than Ron Lim would have. So if we had to get Perez for a certain point of this part of the story, I'm glad that it's the first couple of issues.
Well, look at the page. I don't have page numbers in my edition. I'm sorry about that, but 2 pages where they show Thanos. And they explain what each of the gems can do, hovering above him. And the next page, it's a half page, like a half, three-quarter splash page where Thanos is manipulating reality with the gauntlet. I mean, the artwork is absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah, it's not often Perez gets to cut loose like that. He's usually such a precision guy, just such a draftsman who loves to get into the fine details of reality. But here he's showing something that's completely surreal.
And the notion that the Silver Surfer, one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, has been rendered basically panicked and impotent by his encounter with Thanos and the Gauntlet. So it gives you an idea of the stakes of this story, when a being who has the cosmic power of Galactus within him has been sent fleeing, essentially. So the stakes are clear right off the bat. What's going to happen here?
Also, what you're missing because you don't have the actual comic is the Battletoads ad for the Nintendo game. Yeah.
Oh,
I remember that
those
game.
windows into time are always
Well,
precious.
I've still got my copy of
Did those
Battletoads.
have letters pages in them? I wanted to ask.
They did not.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yep, and I'm afraid only the second issue has page numbers on it, but all the other issues do not.
But they have the subscribe and save. Get 12 issues for $12 mailed right to your door. Oh.
Long gone, my friend.
I did have one question. On the trade, it's page 18. It's the 3 characters who like go off the cliff. They're the reincarnation. Like they've become the reincarnation of the troll and the warlock and Gamora.
Right. Their souls have been absorbed into the soul gem, and if they're
Okay.
going to come back into the Marvel Universe reality, they need bodies to inhabit.
Okay.
And so they take these freshly dead corpses and inhabit them, reanimate them, and reshape them into copies of their old bodies that they had
Okay.
before their souls went into the soul gem.
Now, Pip the troll.
Yeah. What is up with Pip?
He's
Because I
like
loved him.
a
I think he was my favorite part.
Marvel.
Oh, yeah.
Marvel. He's like a mischief maker.
Yeah, he keeps things grounded. He's a debaucher.
Yeah.
He's formerly a prince, actually. Yeah, Prince Pip Gofern of the planet Laxadasia.
Oh my god.
257th in line to the throne.
So
That's one of the many reasons why Adam Murdo is here.
One night he went a drinking with trolls, and you don't drink with trolls without turning into a troll. So he's been kind of hedonist ever since. He helps to keep the cosmic stories grounded. He was the comedy relief in Starlin's old Warlock series, and he's still filling
And
that function here very nicely.
Peter David used him in the more recent X Factor series as well.
Really?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
he's still around.
Another reason to
Oh, he
regret.
showed up recently in the Thanos versus Hulk.
Did he?
stuff.
I haven't read that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that one I did pick up.
Yeah, I read a little bit of it because I didn't have any sort of frame of reference still, but I remember seeing Pip the Troll and going, "What's this naked dude?"
Yeah, he's just sort of Warlock's traveling companion, and an id to his superego, you might say.
Now, Adam Warlock, we know his history. Like he began as him, created by the Enclave, those malevolent scientists in the Silver Age, classic Silver Age FF stories. He then went to Counter Earth, as you mentioned. Again, as this Christ-like figure. He made random appearances at that point. What does Starlin do with him, though, in the 70s? Because you just read that material. That makes him to what the character we know today. Like, what is the transition that goes on there?
Well, there is a lot of soul-searching happening. He's just been denied his home on Counter-Earth after having been denied his home on regular Earth before that. He encounters a young woman who's fleeing from agents of the Universal Church of Truth.
Fabulous.
Which is this sort of a repressive religion, this vast cosmic cult that's being run by this mysterious figure called the Magus. This woman pleads to Warlock for help, and he, having nothing better to do, no other real direction in his life at that time, agrees to help her, but he fails to rescue her from the 3 agents of the church who are chasing her. And eventually he learns that this Magus, he figures this out pretty quickly, and it becomes personal after that. He figures out that the Magus is actually his evil future self. He finds that he's destined to become that which he most
So he
despises.
became L. Ron Hubbard, essentially, and started a galaxy-spanning cult. Okay.
Yes, purple, white afroed L. Ron Hubbard, right,
Okay.
with a big lightning bolt on his chest. He devotes himself then to taking down the Universal Church of Truth and its matriarch, who was an ex-prostitute whom the Magus plucked out of the gutter and made like the mother abbess of this, like the female head of this church. Second only to the Magus himself. And he has to go through all these adventures, jump through all these hoops. He's captured by their agents, and they try to brainwash him. And that's he has this famous sort of journey to the center of the mind, which is
This is all the Starlin material.
Oh, yes,
right?
of course,
okay.
yeah. And they're trying to brainwash him, and they're trying to present the church to him as these noble heroes and champions of truth, but all he sees are clowns. So you often see in like flashbacks to some of Starlin's work, you'll see like an image of this clown who's hanging around and trying to, tempt Warlock and corrupt him. And that clown was named Lentian, and he was actually one of the doctors who was working on Warlock. So this journey to the center of the mind stuff, the spiritual journey, the inner odyssey, this is what Starlin thrives on. This defines a lot of his work. And so Warlock was definitely a soul searcher here, and he came to despair eventually. In the course of the time-bending adventure with the Magus, he stepped outside of the loop of destiny, so that chaos and order and fate do not really affect him anymore. So it's kind of like Mr. Terrific from the JSA, who was invisible to technology.
He's invisible to cosmic forces of temporality.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. Yes, and so he.
Billy.
That's how he was able to snip by a Nebula later on in this story,
Right.
in the Infinity Gauntlet, because he's
And for listeners, they've recently done relatively recently, that trade that you have, which they packaged all the Starlin's Warlock stories from the Bronze Age into one book.
right.
And I think there's also a Marvel Masterworks hardcover available for those stories as well. I think they first appeared when they relaunched Strange Tales, remember correctly.
That is correct.
And then did he have his own book briefly after that? Warlock?
He
I
had
wanna
his
say
own
yes,
book
yeah.
before that, and that was the Roy Thomas
That was
run.
the Roy Thomas one,
and
yes.
that had been on hiatus for a while. But
Right.
then after his sort of test run for a few issues of Strange Tales,
Yeah.
then they brought back
Right.
the Power
And that
of
was all
Warlock.
Starlin. So
Yes, exactly. That was all Starlin. He, for a while there, he wrote, penciled, and inked it.
Yeah.
And that got to be a little too much for him after a while, and he had to have some help on the art end.
Well, speaking of art, the 2-page spread of Thanos' I guess we call it a temple, a monument to death. Ugh. Perez.
I need to get a close-up cam going. I really wanted to, but I
We'll get there,
didn't
my
have
friend.
enough cameras.
We'll get there. But I want to say Death first appeared as a character in Marvel Comics. I want to say in the comic War is Hell, if I remember correctly, from the Bronze Age. I'd have to double check that, but my Overstreet memories, that seems to be stirring that.
There's an Overstreet right there, you know.
Ah. I'll check in a moment, brother.
Why don't I check while you talk?
Honored. But Death has always played a role in Thanos' saga. I think back to the Death of Captain Marvel graphic novel, which came out before this in the early 80s, which I assume, have you all read The Death of Captain Marvel?
I have not.
Murd. Sir, we will rectify that as soon as you will love that story.
I'm sure it's been reprinted a number of
Oh,
times.
wait,
but
wait. When you come to the shop in 2 weeks, I'm putting a copy in your hands, and you're walking out with it.
right after I charge it to my credit card.
No, this one's a gift. Because that's another great Thanos story that also involves death and his obsession with death. So
It is a story that I definitely should read.
Yeah.
So thank you, Chris,
of
for
course.
keeping me honest here.
And Chris, you are correct. Issue 9 had the intro death, and issue 10 death appearance.
War is Hell, right?
Yeah.
Okay. One of Marvel's
bet.
brief forays into war comics in the Bronze Age. But, as Danielle mentioned, and, I can't really argue with her. In a way, a lot of this is about Thanos' obsession with the fact that he's being constantly spurned by his obsession.
It absolutely is. Mephisto keeps putting in his ear. She's not happy yet. She's not happy yet. What are you gonna do about it?
She'll never love you. Give me your glove. Nothing.
I need to go kill more people because I want death to love me.
Well, I was sort of surprised that at some point Thanos didn't just reach over and pop his head like, all right, stop telling me all the things that she hates. I'm aware of this now. You're annoying. Because when you're omnipotent like that, why wouldn't you just get away from me, flee?
Well, I don't know. Why didn't Theoden do that to Grima when he had the chance?
Well, he was. There's a very good reason for that. Is because Saruman was polluting his brain through
All right.
Wormtongue. That's how that all happened.
Again, I don't have page numbers here, but when Mephisto and Thanos are going back and forth, and the one panel here where Thanos, you're reminded of what Thanos really is all about. He says, am I not Thanos? Did I not butcher the woman who gave me birth, who force-fed me into this hell called life? That panel captures Thanos perfectly, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, he's not always quite that angry.
True,
But
his origins and sort of what he came from. And the Jason Aaron miniseries that was out recently, that's now in trade form, a lot of it really comes out of this panel.
Okay.
And what Thanos happens with his parents and what shapes him and so forth. So
yeah, and I suppose I should offer a disclaimer to our friends here that I don't really like that miniseries
I know
as
Mummer
much.
does not like it. Yes.
Yeah,
I
so,
read the first issue. I liked it, but I will say it's funny because if they do take elements of this story and put it in the Avengers movie, and if someone actually goes and reads Infinity Gauntlet, I wonder how they'll take it, because not knowing much about Thanos, I just kept thinking he was a whiny little baby throughout this whole book. And that panel to me is just like, wah, wah, wah. Like, that's just what I get from him.
Well, Thanos' obsession with death has been, Merv, would you agree, has been the anchor for the character throughout.
His very name means
think
death.
Yeah, I think that's about the only thing I knew about Thanos was he is obsessed with death.
And there are many other stories, which we've alluded to, where you see him in a very different, you know, the almost darkly magnificent, you know, Machiavellian warlord and plotter and you know, 3 steps ahead, that type of thing, and terrifying. I mean,
you do see a little of that in Thanos Quest too.
Yeah, and you know, vicious. I mean, we kind of make light of it here, but he does wipe out half of existence.
He does.
These 2 pages in my book 32 and 33 are just, they are phenomenal. After he's done with his tantrum and he goes, oh, I know what I have to do.
That's right. I nearly forgot.
Yeah.
And then snap.
And Mephisto's super excited. Like, I am going to watch this.
He's really going to do it. He's going to do it. And the negative image there of the finger snap as the gems flare out. You know, J.J. Abrams would be proud of that, I think. But yeah, that's a great little panel. It's a wonderfully understated little snap of the fingers, and suddenly, you know, semi-genocide is accomplished.
The very next panel is awesome too, because it's a full height panel of Spider-Man hanging from a web with the spider logo sort of behind him, and this again, it's all white except for the web. It's beautiful.
Yeah, Perez is impressing us here with his ability to do
cam. It's killing me.
Character-based establishing panels.
My younger son Jun is now with us on camera.
Barely, yes. If he pulls in a little bit, he'll be on camera.
You're there, buddy. I know it's already one of your life's ambitions. Danielle was commenting on the way in, and I agree. When you go through the art of the book, some of the hairstyles, the clothing, it's so that late 80s, early 90s feel. like is it Eric Masterson is the Thor of this time? He's got like the mullet, essentially. And
Yeah.
The Hulk is in one of his classic, I don't know what he's wearing, just the big belt. And
that suit is so brown.
Open belly
That
jumpsuit.
suit is the brownest suit I've ever seen.
yeah, so that's just a fun little time capsule right there.
The Hulk speed suit.
I also like how the story reminds us in this first issue of the power of characters like Doctor Strange, who's also getting his own movie now. That's with Benedict Cumberbatch, right?
Yes.
Daniel's grinning ear to ear. You know, they remind us of the power of on Titan and Mentor and all these different characters who really are we don't always see them that often, but they're major players in sort of the cosmic scope of the Marvel universe. I think one of the best things the story does, it reminds us of these entities, especially getting the latter issues, which I can't wait to hear you wax rhapsodic on, Murd. But
I'll see what I can do.
you never fail to disappoint, my friend. Murd, explain, because I forgot. This may go back to the hymn stories from FF and the Silver Age. Adam Warlock in the cocoon at the end of that first issue. Now, does he do that to restore his powers, so to speak? What's the point of that?
His life force, his health. I mean, any time
Okay.
that he's very badly damaged physically, and I guess coming back from the dead qualifies, especially when you're coming back in a body that isn't your own and that has just died in a terrible car wreck. He always forms that around himself every time he's suffered such near fatal damage. He needs to just gather cosmic energy to himself in order to recuperate. And
Now, when
he
he
always comes
I'm
out
sorry.
slightly altered
Right.
after he does that in mind, body, and soul.
And when he was conceived by the Enclave, would you call him an artificial man? Or is he, what is his designation? Is he human originally? Or was he just kind of made out of genetic stew, so to speak? Or
He is Warlock.
Okay.
He is what he is. Or something cryptically existentialist like that.
perfect.
No, that sounds good. I'm satisfied.
Born to be Earth's perfect man of the future, then forced to abandon his native world due to his alien ways. He stalks the stars seeking life. That's it's part of the tagline that came at the beginning of every issue of Starlin's Warlock.
Danny's feeling dirty thoughts.
I like. I like that he gets the cocoon. He wasn't that bad. I mean, I guess he had to copper tone up and stuff, but
Get the man tan on there.
troll
I like the
was, as he put it, a briquette. And he didn't need a cocoon. He just needed to sit and watch Alf.
Exactly.
Until he was
right,
better.
Alf appears in 2 panels in the Infinity Gauntlet. And he had his own Marvel comic, too. It was
He
canceled
sure
by
did,
now, but
because I got to do a little tangent here. I forgot the issue number. Daniel knows what I'm talking about. There is a cover of Alf where the editors clearly either weren't paying attention or they were just running with it. It is so inappropriately sexually suggestive. It's hilarious. I can't go any further because my sons are in the room. But I'll dig it out because it's... Daniel, remember this cover that John Paul gave me?
Vaguely remember.
It's... Wow. I'll show it to you, Murd. And it wasn't even Assistant Editor's Month. It was just...
I look forward to that. But, yeah, apparently Pip and Gamora didn't need their cocoons. It's true. Of course, Gamora was part of the Great Disappearance.
Now,
So.
Yeah.
Gamora and Pip are both Starlin creations, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. From the original Warlock series he was doing?
Right.
Okay. So, you know what? You really have to read The Death of Captain Marvel because a lot of this history before the Infinity Gauntlet is incorporated into that in terms of Thanos. And, sir, we're going to take care of that as soon as possible.
All right.
I have a question about you see like all these different responses to the Great Disappearance. You see the both the Kree and the Skrull on various pages.
Automatically assuming their enemy was the one
Automatically,
responsible,
I
yes.
loved that they were both like, "Oh, it must have been them. Let's go fight them." Like half the population's gone. No, have a war. Did that have ramifications, or was that just nebulaed away with everything else?
They fight
Okay.
so often that, it's
Who
par for the
knows,
course.
right? They were going to fight tomorrow anyway.
Yes.
We had a war schedule.
They don't need another excuse to break to New Mutiny from Ancient Grudge. But
Okay.
by the end of Infinity Gauntlet, as Chris said, it's pretty much forgotten.
All right.
Everyone forgets that half of the universe died, and just go on with what they were doing.
Adam, I actually have another question, sort of character continuity.
Sure.
I think it's the second issue where Quasar appears.
All right.
Page 4.
Yeah.
Second issue.
What is that costume he's wearing? Which is, it looks like he has the Captain Marvel symbol. I'm not familiar with that period of Quasar's history.
Well, that's. I think that's the third different costume Quasar wore. He didn't have it very long. I think he was using it during the Operation Galactic Quest story. I could be wrong about that, and I'm still trying to find the page, but. The similarity to Marvel's costume
is opposite the Battletoads ad again in
issue
2.
Okay,
That was a big game.
Here we go. Got it. Yep.
1991.
And it is. There's the Battletoad ad, and there's the page number 4. But yeah, the similarity to Marvel's costume is not accidental because his Marvel's old mentor Eon took on the role of mentoring Quasar as well.
Okay.
Yeah, those aren't the same wristbands that Marvel had.
No, I knew that, yeah.
But yeah, he has taken over Marvel's role as protector of the universe, a role that he was thrust into by Captain Marvel was thrust into by Jim Starlin.
And I love how when you open issue 2, Perez is Joe Rubinstein's the anchor.
Yes.
Anchor, yes. But just this riveting Thanos splash page. Let nihilism reign supreme. Pure Thanos. Just the glimmer in his eye and the grin as he wields the gauntlet.
Not 100% sure that necrophilia and nihilism are one and the same thing, but
Nice marmot, man.
close enough for government work.
Well, and what Bill was mentioning before, on the next page, you have the 2-page splash. Again, that airplane that's crashed. That's what cathedral is that? St. Patrick's Cathedral.
It's on Fifth Avenue, so yeah, it'd almost have to be.
But again, you get that sense, and Bill put it very well, that the heroes really are powerless. Like millions of people are dying all over the planet Earth. They really can't do much. They can only save people here and there, and that's really it. I mean, Japan has sank into the ocean.
Yeah, Thor just shows up and it's done.
It's gone. And those are powerful images. I always love stories where they put heroes in a situation where their powers really they can only do so much, and they have to try to figure out ways how to persevere and compensate. And that's always an interesting read.
I think I would have been more interested in a couple issues of that and not the cosmic stuff. But it's just because I don't like the cosmic stuff.
And fair enough, my dear. And as
I think,
go ahead,
Danny,
my
if
friend.
I can interject.
Please.
I think you might not like Jim Starlin
Probably
cosmic?
not. Probably not.
Because some of the when Abnett and Lanning relaunched the
tremendous.
cosmic stuff in 2006 or
I've
7
read
or
some of
whatever,
that stuff. I like
that
it.
stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's real. It's not all heady.
Yeah,
like
I
this
There's a
is.
lot of good character play in,
Yeah, I
in those
can't
stories.
do the towards. I think it's this. The beginning wasn't too bad. It was towards the end where everyone's just like battling and they have these concepts and they're all powerful and it's not grounded in anything that I can grasp.
Good.
That it just goes over my head and I just don't care.
Well, not that it's not good that it's over your head, but it's good that it's not grounded.
Yeah.
For my taste, anyway.
Yeah, see that to me, I'm like, I don't care. They're just gonna fight each other and it's all theoretical, made up. There's no I don't know.
So let's put it this way. I heard Starlin talking at a bar after a comic convention one time. He was telling a story, and the story ended where he sort of proudly proclaimed that he woke up naked in the Mexican desert. And then was like, wow, that must have been a good night. It's like, so that's the
Wow.
kind of
Tremendous.
person,
Yeah.
like that's his lifestyle in the 70s or 80s or whatever. That was what he did when he was young, and he wasn't like horrified by this. That was like cool. That was a formative moment in his life,
that
right?
was a normal day.
That makes sense. It puts his stories, I think, a little more in perspective.
The desert makes you weird, always.
Yeah.
I feel like that would make me like him more, but no, still, it's too.
It's
too
And then
out there
on his
for
way to
me.
brunch, he saw Master Order and Lord Chaos and the Lords of Love and Hate mud wrestling.
Yet, my dear, if you read
That's a day.
if you read The Death of Captain Marvel, which I think is one of Starlin's greatest achievements, that is such a personal story because it's about, granted, he's a superhero, but a man struggling with the fact that he's going to die from cancer. And there's a lot of other stuff going on with Thanos, but that's at the core of that story. It's
Yeah,
a
I
classic.
might enjoy that.
It's an absolute classic. In fact, it was one of the stories the readers selected for the 75 best Marvel stories on Omnibus that came out. So, highly recommend that. I'm just looking at the 2 pages of Doctor Strange sort of astrally projecting himself into the Soul Gem,
Yeah,
right?
being astrally abducted, really,
Yes.
by Warlock, who at this point is not really known to any of the characters he's contacting.
And the artwork is so beautiful.
Oh, no,
God.
it is.
Huh.
I really liked this scene. So trippy.
Yeah, and the fact that Warlock is being represented largely by a pair of disembodied, sort of Scooby-Doo opening sequence frowning eyeballs, that's a very traditionally Starlin image, too. Like there was one story from his Warlock run called "The Bizarre Brain of Barry Bauman."
Bum, 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 bum.
And it was about this guy. He was bedridden. He had never been able to see, hear, or all of his 5 senses were inoperative, but he was still conscious. And somehow he developed this incredible psionic ability, and he was out to steal entire star systems just to amuse himself. And he manifested himself as a pair of these floating golden eyes.
Great.
So Perez draws Warlock's eyes to look very much like Barry Bauman's eyes. And
of
that's
course, on the
Perezian
next-
attention to detail.
On the next page, there can be no Marvel event without the presence of Doom.
I do like how he shows up and everybody's just on to him. They all know. They're like, we remember that time with the thing with Beyonder. Like, no, go away. Stop.
You're not getting near the shiny things, Doom.
You can't have the toys. Just Doom can help. Just don't let him have the toys.
But I have in the store. I commissioned from George Perez many years ago at one of the early Pittsburgh
Perez.
cons. I said Perez, didn't I?
No, you said Perez.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, let me get a quarter out.
Just continue your story, Liz.
But I had him commission a Doctor Doom sketch. Still hangs proud in the shop. I love his Doctor Doom. I especially love how he draws Doctor Doom's eyes. There's the madness and just the sinister quality to them. It's the brooding. It's so well done. A chance to expend my scientific knowledge and personal power. Magnificent. Look at the shot on the next. Mr. Deem already has it open, of Thanos grinning ear to ear, as he just kind of taunts Star Fox with his possession of the gauntlet. It's
Yeah,
outstanding.
that's his brother. That's the
Yep.
guy that I think is going to be Star-Lord's father in the
Okay.
Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He is, as Chris said, Thanos' brother. His real name is Eros. So you got Eros and Thanos. Classical Greek duality of love and death. And Star Fox's power is to stimulate people's pleasure centers. He gets a lot of tail. And here he's just there to... Well,
In fact, Daniel, you remember the Dan Slott
The
She-Hulk run, where he ends up in court because of all the women that he's...
Oh, yeah.
This is a great story.
interplanetary paternity suits.
Was it Rocket Raccoon too?
And it's great that Starlin drags him into all of this as yet another, sort of court jester for Thanos, along with poor Nebula. And what Thanos does to Nebula visually, it's a horrifying visual, and it's a horrifying concept, too. She's suspended as like a living representative of the balance between life and
She's
death.
just on the cusp of both.
She's like
and
living
this terrible
concept
purgatory.
art.
And that's not where he stops either. Like that's default. That's like baseline. And then once he gets Star Fox, like some of the things that he does to them just look horrifying. Like he's just putting them through their own personal physics hell.
Oh, right.
Yeah, was she dead and then he resurrected her, or what was?
I think she was alive, and Thanos made her mostly but not completely dead.
Oh, okay.
Now, has it ever been made clear as to whether or not she actually is... She's claimed that she is his granddaughter.
As of a few years after this story, Thanos was still vehemently denying
Okay.
that she was any relation to him. But now, in the present day, now that we know that Thanos has been sowing his wild oats all over the cosmos,
Right.
it seems that she has a little more credibility.
Right. Now, in the movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, they established her as his daughter, right? Didn't they say she was his daughter?
They did.
Because she calls him dad at one point. Yeah.
I guess that's just easier to
Right.
digest
Yeah.
for most people, and it makes more sense as to why she would be one of his, direct lieutenants.
Yeah. Because Nebula was a major villain in the Avengers stories prior to this in the 1980s, where she had control of, of Thanos' starship, and she was wreaking all kinds of havoc and so forth.
Thanos hadn't quite risen from the dead himself
Yes.
at that time, right? So she
So-
could safely make any claims she wanted to about
Right.
him then. But once he came back, he was pretty miffed. You remember that issue of Secret Defenders we were talking about on Back to the
Yes.
Bins?
Yes.
In that very issue, he grew violent at a character who suggested that Nebula claimed to be his granddaughter, and he threw the guy against the wall of his ship and said, that she is not my granddaughter. But maybe she is after all.
It's a jarring page when they show you all the heroes who are missing, who have been lost to the great disappearance.
Oh yeah. Puck.
Okay, who is Box?
I don't know.
Box from Alpha Flight.
Madison Jeffries, his
Alpha Flight.
superpower is like technopathy. He can communicate mentally with
How
technology.
how do I not recognize him?
He's been a part of Alpha Flight since almost the beginning.
That's weird.
Who is Windshear? I was in a character I didn't recognize at all.
His real name is Colin Ashford Hume.
Tremendous.
He's African-Canadian, and he has the mutant ability to manipulate air molecules. Yeah, he showed up in Thunderbolts. Remember Andrea Sturman, her long quest to uncover the secrets
Oh,
behind...
yes, that's right.
Yeah, one of the
That's
people
right,
she interviewed was the retired Windshear. He'd become an artist.
Yes. Okay.
But for a while there, he was a part of Department H, and he had this wind-powered thing going.
What I love is they show the Wasp in one of her multitude of costumes that many of which I think Perez has designed actually, which is always fun. It's interesting to see kind of the snapshot of the Marvel Universe in the early 90s, like who were major heroes at that time, what kind of costumes they had.
Night Thrasher's on the list.
Night Thrasher from New Warriors, right?
If he turned up dead now, I'm not sure anyone would notice.
Yeah.
Of course, he's been dead for a while, hasn't he?
Man, I miss Hawkeye's
so.
costume.
At least Dwayne Taylor was. I think he had a half-brother or something that showed up in a later version of the
These
team.
weird boot things were very popular in the early 90s, it seems.
Oh yeah.
They're like
Very big
puffy
boots.
You mean like
or-
Buccaneer boots?
I don't know what.
Yeah.
Whatever Hawkeye's boots are. And then,
Oh, wow, yeah, that's...
Yeah, then Box has them. And,
Well, I think those are made of metal, but
oh, okay.
but
well,
definitely meant to emulate the
Yeah.
style.
yeah, it seems like it was a thing. It was a fashion
Mert, who was
thing.
Diamond Lil? I
yeah,
don't remember who
it's-
she was either.
She was a member of Omega Flight,
Okay.
who's like the evil opposite number
of
of
Alpha
Alpha Flight.
Flight, yeah.
She had super strength, diamond hard skin. I think she defected to the good side eventually.
We should remind people if you're ever looking for good back issues that are cheap, Burns' Alpha Flight run is outstanding, and those usually can find those for.
And one of the most famous covers, I would say.
Yes.
The Snowblind cover.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great cover, and also the cover where they taunt you in issue 12 that one of them's going to die, which turns out to be was he called Guardian at that point or Vindicator?
I lose
Hudson,
track.
I forgot,
He
yeah.
and his wife have swapped names so
Yeah.
often.
Murd, what do you think of the next page where they show you the Sky Fathers?
That's I have a list here of awesome
you do.
panels. Snap was the first one. When Thanos begins tormenting Star Fox on page 17 of issue 2, when he has no mouth and he must scream.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's another one. And then the Council of Sky Fathers is another great one. Sort of a overhead shot of the leaders of all these various mythological pantheons in the Marvel universe.
Now, Zeus we've seen many times in the Marvel Universe prior to this.
Certainly.
I don't know about... What about the others, though?
I know for a fact that Osiris had appeared before this.
Okay.
He and the rest of the gods of Heliopolis were in a couple of issues of Thor.
Well, Set was an enemy of Thor that would often show up.
Right.
Think about that.
Yeah. The others, I cannot be sure. I mean, I know there'd been some appearances of Celtic deities, but let's see. I guess Nuada might have been a part of that. The others, the Russian god here, Aztec, Mayan, Manitou. I really don't know whether we've seen them
I'm just
before
wondering
or
if they
not.
kind of incorporated some of them just on the spot for this story, if any of them had a history in the Marvel Universe prior to that.
Would have been fun if Perez had just designed all these costumes on the fly for this.
Well, he's no slouch when it comes to costume design. The dramatic introduction of Adam Warlock a few pages later.
Oh, when he bursts out of the cocoon?
Yep. Now, he's had various costumes, right? He appears differently every time, correct?
Right,
So-
right. Every time he regenerates, he's got a slightly different, slightly different costume. Yeah.
Yeah. And his companion Pip smoking the stogie. He was engulfing potato chips and beer prior to that.
Yeah, sitting eating Cheetos,
Yeah.
half naked,
Watching Elf.
watching Al, recuperating from being on fire. As you do.
Love how Doom shows up trying to work the power angle for himself.
Oh, yes, and a fight breaks out between him and Silver Surfer
Yeah.
immediately.
Slapping Surfer silly.
Surfer has not forgotten the last time Doom tried to steal the power
yep,
cosmic.
and then there's one of the fun, gross things that Thanos does.
Oh, to Star Fox and
and
Nebula.
Nebula.
Yeah,
Nebula.
it's
Wow. Yeah.
Look at him dance.
The
Look at 'em
shrieking
dance.
tendrils pouring out of...
into and out of them.
Eyeballs and teeth.
Yeah. That's almost like a Sandman type image. I mean,
I was
those,
just
Yeah.
thinking
I mean,
that
it's,
actually.
Makinian.
it's pretty horrifying.
Yeah, it puts me in mind of the living dream from
Yeah.
the Constantine story in the first trade.
But this is, and just the next page, again, more torture of Nebula and Star Fox.
All right, MC Escher style this
Yeah,
time.
whew. Basically disassembling them, and then reincorporating them back together again. What? What does it take to please you?
Haven't I tortured
I did
them in
everything
numbers of
right!
days?
See, there it is.
She's just not moved by the ever more creative, imaginative ways he can torture his brother and his granddaughter.
Well, who wouldn't be, though? I think she's a frigid bitch. Sorry. But, yeah, just so petulant that he just unleashes a wave of devastation.
That wipes out
across-
planets that Galactus was about to feed on.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. Boy, that population of people was just having a bad day.
Yeah.
The people on that planet
Yeah.
were like, oh, Galactus is here. Can't get any worse.
But the image of Galactus in his world ship, and the creators are reminding us that even he is essentially powerless in the face of Thanos and the Gauntlet. But he has to seek allies to try to take Thanos on. So, but again, here's the personal. We go back to the Cloak and Dagger characters. I think it's the first appearance of Cloak in this story. He just says, "I am lost. Dagger is gone. How can I go on?" These are Bill Mantlo created characters from the 80s who have a very symbiotic relationship. And
We might note here that they actually had their own series
They
when,
sure did.
when this was happening, and there were comparatively few crossovers to the
Yeah.
Infinity Gauntlet. There were a few. They were identified by a little triangle box in the upper right-hand corner.
Oh, I'd forgotten about
An
that.
Infinity
Okay.
Gauntlet crossover. They use pretty much the same cover design for all 3 installments of the trilogy, the Gauntlet, War, and Crusade. One of those crossovers, though, was Cloak and Dagger, number 18.
So, again, that's, I think, more of the personal touch that Danielle would appreciate, where you see the impact on a character in their life as these cataclysmic events unfold. I mean, massive earthquakes in New York City.
Iron Man, taking these readings and then getting knocked out of the sky, and coming back online just in time to watch California sink.
And the notion that the West Coast Avengers realized that they basically couldn't save anybody. Is that the Jim Hammond Human Torch?
Yes, it is.
'Cause that's with a brief period when he was part of the team, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Okay, you can tell by the lack of facial features.
Yes, from the Golden Age. Odin is powerless. I mean, Asgard has been wrecked.
Right? The entire Council of Skyfathers
Yeah.
is just kind of crawling out of the wreckage, and we realize that in the Marvel Universe, there's some conflicts in which even gods can't play a part.
Yep.
And that's pretty much the last we see of this group of characters
That's
in the
true.
story.
Rainbow Bridge is broken.
Again.
And we go back, and I agree with you, Bill. I think it's one of the most powerful images in the whole story, which is Namorita who only able to save just that one couple from that enormous tidal wave that just crashes down on the Atlantic City boardwalk. And then Thor sees that Japan is it's gone. You know, all this, there's just seagulls. That's
they're
it.
panicking. They're flying all over the place.
Yeah.
They're doing what they can, and it's nothing.
Yeah. And not only does he have to break this bad news, make a formal report of the loss of all those lives, he has to, use Thor speak to do it. They are no more.
We have to remind people this is not Thor.
Right, this is Eric Masterson
Yeah.
possessing the power of Thor, and
Yeah.
he's trying to make people believe that it's the same Thor it's always been. He's just wearing a beard and a slightly different helmet.
Yeah.
So he needs to do his best imitation of the pseudo-Elizabethan Asgardian lingo that he can.
He drops it quite a few times.
And I have to think that, noticing that Japan has been destroyed, he probably wasn't really in the mood.
Yeah.
And during the fight with Thanos, he just drops it a couple times. He's like, right, I'm gonna hit you with that. Right now."
Well, he's got the... Thanos knows what's going on anyway. He knows everything that's going on. He's got the mind gem.
And the third issue, is the third issue the last Perez issue? I believe it is.
It is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but
Look at that opening shot of the Death Temple.
Yep, more
Right.
Eisnerism going on
Yeah.
there with Thanos spelling out his name in
and
planetoids.
planets, which is great. So that's breathtaking. But like we mentioned before, Mephisto is still working his sycophantic angle here for his own purposes. It's interesting that Thanos is basically letting him fill this role, almost like this Iago type character, just kind of whispering in his ear and over his shoulder. We get a reminder of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s role in all this as Nick Fury realizes that they're also basically helpless in the face of these massive, epic cosmic events. And I found this one of the most powerful moments in the whole story. Again, the human personal aspect, when the Black Widow cannot save that woman who's hanging by her fingernails from the precipice of that burning building, and she fails. She can't save her. And again, it's those human moments that remind you of who gets sucked up into these epic space operatic, cosmic sagas. So it was a powerful moment. And great artwork.
I think the strangest, disconnected thing is that Thanos neither knows nor cares that he's doing any of this.
Oh,
Maybe he does. So, because he is omnipotent,
he
claims it in all.
He worships death. He's providing her with more souls.
Yeah.
So why not? It's take it down to the human level when we've all had those moments where we really want to win somebody over romantically. And you think of all the different things you would be willing to do and all the silly little schemes you come up with and plans. And then you just magnify that to this epic cosmic level where you had this man who was the power, was not a man, but this demigod who has the power to basically manipulate reality. He's going to get the girl any way he possibly can. Even means, wiping out half the known galaxy. So
At this
that's
point,
what's
I
happening.
think I need the Infinity Gauntlet if I'm ever going to win over Keiko.
Oh, God.
So far, it's been effort. I mean, there's been no reward for my effort.
Well, she's a hell of a good cook. I mean, she's made you some fine meals.
But then, that's true.
But look, I know how lucky I am to have a woman as beautiful as Keiko as my wife. I realize I'm totally unworthy, undeserving. I'm a flea, But for whatever reason, I'm a very lucky man. And but you have a lovely wife yourself, sir.
That's not the point.
Magnificent.
Keiko and I pretended to be a couple
They did.
one day.
Oh, that's a good day.
Yeah, it
Very
was.
recently.
And I got a text. I was at the East Coast Comic Con. I got a picture of Danielle grinning with my two sons, and Keiko sent a text saying, "This is my, my partner and my adopted children, essentially."
Megan Ling, we renamed her.
Murd, when we get to the introduction of Wolverine, Drax, Fire Lord, they're Captain America's assembling the heroes to combat Thanos. Now, Drax was Thanos murdered. He was a human, and Thanos murdered his family.
Right. Because they had witnessed
his
Thanos'
spacecraft or
landing
something?
on Earth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were just kind of collateral damage, wrong place at the wrong time.
But he survived.
well,
or did
no,
he not?
he died. His
How
daughter
was he resurrected? I
His
forgot.
daughter survived, and
Okay.
his
She's
daughter,
Moondragon.
exactly.
Right,
She was
okay.
adopted by certain Titanian priests and taught their ways, learned to develop her latent psychic potential, and also became a peerless martial artist. But her father, Arthur Douglas, was brought back to life by the god being Kronos, who is part of the delegation of cosmic beings who show up to confront
Right.
Thanos later on, and is actually, I probably should have looked this up, but he's an ancestor of Thanos, an immediate ancestor. He's either his grandfather or his great uncle. So Kronos and Thanos are directly related. And Kronos transcended the bonds of the flesh and became kind of this godlike being.
Isn't he in this story?
He is, yeah.
Yeah,
Like I
okay,
said,
right,
he's in among that group of cosmic
Right.
beings who show up to take Thanos
Right.
on. So he is the one. He kind of became the god of Titan, like the patron deity there, and he has certain powers over the flow of time. He's the one who resurrected Arthur Douglas, father of Moondragon, as Drax the Destroyer, and he was brought back to life for one purpose and one purpose alone: to kill Thanos.
Kill Thanos, yep.
So even after he suffered a form of brain damage, that's one thing he sort of so half remembers, is that he needs to kill the Purple Man.
Right. And even in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I mean, they do it in a different way, but they emphasize that Drax wants to kill Thanos. So
Yeah, I'm actually kind of hoping that some of Drax's original origin will be preserved. That it turns out the memories he thinks he has of his wife and child being killed by Thanos are not quite what he thinks they are.
we'll
that
see.
his wife and child were killed by Thanos, but on Earth.
right.
And so he's actually like Arthur Douglas of Earth. That would be kind of a left field reveal that I think movie-going audiences might like.
Absolutely. Of course, we have the classic Doctor Doom trying to take control of everything. He wants to lead the assault.
Just look at the panel of Captain America and Doom squinting at each other
Tremendous.
in profile.
Very well, Captain. In for now.
Possibly the two strongest wills on
Yes.
planet Earth in the Marvel Universe.
I want to note something strange in the preceding page too, where Hulk is refusing to go through the portal. There is a Toxic Avenger poster on the wall,
Yes, there is.
and I couldn't help but
Oh, I totally missed that.
right, small in the background, but who else would have that mop brandished in such a fashion?
Well done.
Thank you.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
God, I haven't seen that movie in years.
While we're Easter egg hunting, there was a panel back in the first issue that had a similar poster on the wall for a kung fu demonstration by the Sons of the Tiger.
Ah,
Oh, nice.
Old 70s Marvel martial artists, including the White Tiger, who was a George Perez creation.
yes. Now we have a page where Moon Knight appears.
Yeah, talking about Stained Glass Scarlet, who was one
Yeah.
of his foes from that time. So Starlin either did his homework or had some good editorial input.
And then again, just sort of that hero point of view where they just feel helpless. They can't seem to do anything to stop this cataclysm. And as a side, I highly recommend, there's 2 trades out now. The recent Moon Knight series, first by Warren Ellis and then Brian Wood. Trades 1 and 2 are out. Tremendous. Highest recommendation if you're a Moon Knight fan, or if you just want to try a new Marvel title. We gotta move ahead here, as far as I'm concerned, to the 2-page spread of Marvel's Cosmic Pantheon.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Several of whom were created by Starlin.
Or by Ditko.
Yes.
In terms of eternity, for example. It's breathtaking two-page spread.
Pretty sure this is where I just went, I'm done. I'm out. I'm off.
If it's where I really sat up and paid attention.
Yeah, it's just not my cup of tea. It's not saying the story is bad. It's just not something I'm into.
Yeah. Apologies to present company. Archetypes have always been more interesting to me than people anyway. So
Yeah, and I love slice of life type stuff. So
yeah. This story isn't so much about that.
yeah, no, not at all.
You got your Namorita moment, your Moon Knight
Yeah.
moment, all that good stuff. But here's where this is the jumping off point.
Yeah, this is where I lose it.
I always liked when people were spangly, like Kronos and Eternity.
Living starfields.
That's it's such an impactful image. I think it actually got carried over into some Magic the Gathering style.
Oh, is that so?
Very recently, yeah, where they had characters who were Greek gods, and they had the very same sort of
yeah, they did.
imagery, where in their shadow there would be celestial bodies.
All I can think is that must have
Well
been a
done,
pain
Wizards
in
of the
the
Coast.
ass to ink.
Adam, I forgot. Now, the
Oh
Celestials.
my God, yes.
I mean, a Kirby creation.
Yes.
Are they considered, quote, gods? Or are they alien beings from some... I've forgotten their origin, to be honest with you.
Well, in the Marvel Universe, all the small G gods, you know,
Yeah.
like the Asgardians and the
Right.
Olympians and so forth, they are actually just like really super powerful aliens.
Right.
With some channeling cosmic energy in a way that could be called divine.
Right.
The Celestials are the same thing, but a couple of evolutionary steps up. So, yeah, there's still...
'Cause they created the Eternals, didn't they?
They did,
Okay,
absolutely.
right.
And Thanos is actually technically an Eternal himself.
Right.
Since all natives of Titan are part of that offshoot of the human race that were tampered with by the Eternals many, many millennia ago. But by the Celestials many, many millennia ago.
What I know of that comes from Earth X. Is that fairly accurate?
Well, so Earth X has it that planets that the Celestials seeded,
Right.
they're just embryonic Celestials, and the Celestials tampered with the residents, the inhabitants of these planets, and gave them superpowers just so they could defend these little baby Celestials hatching inside.
Right, and you would see, and you saw sort of how all of these different factions of the Marvel Universe were just various stages in the antibody evolution.
Right, the Skrulls being a much higher stage.
And then even the Asgardians.
Right,
being
right,
the sort
because
of like neutralizing.
yeah, the genetic,
stage, yeah.
the genome became more and more malleable and adaptable, and the Skrulls were very advanced because they could change shape, and and that works fantastically well too. If we ever, I'll gush about this if we ever do Earth X as a book of the month, but it works. It worked even better than Kruger and Ross realized, I think, because if you look at the Skrulls and then look at the Pop-Upians, the Impossible Man's race, they're probably the highest level. They had evolved a kind of collective consciousness. They had the green skin like the Skrulls, and they had even stronger shape-shifting powers than the Skrulls did. They're like the most powerful shapeshifters in the entire Marvel universe, and their world was probably seeded by the Celestials as well because Galactus consumed it.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of Galactus's. He was drawn to worlds that had celestial embryos in them. But anyway, all of that has not really been officially adopted into Marvel Universe.
Because that's where I understand most of this stuff, and it was very familiar.
Yeah,
I was wondering if that applied here, what was the cutoff line there?
Yeah, and Earth X was a very well-crafted cosmology, and it made it all make a lot of sense. But I don't think that in the Earth 616 reality we really know the motives of the Eternals and why they have created the Eternals and the Deviants and why they keep coming back to Earth to judge the fitness of humanity. But here they are as part of this little group to judge the fitness of Thanos to continue wielding the power of the Infinity Gems.
I forgot. The role of the Living Tribunal.
He's the silliest looking one.
Which
I'm sorry.
And they've actually been using him in the build-up to the new Secret Wars. Is he like a cosmic judge?
Yes.
Okay.
In a word, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, more than that, we've never really been told or have been explained to us, but we know that he is, if there is such a thing as a monotheistic deity in the Marvel Universe, if there is a one above all, a true creator god with whom no one, not even someone who has the Infinity Gems, can mess, this is the guy who's one step below that god.
Okay. Because Eternity
Yeah, he's just the embodiment
he's
of the
embodiment
universe
of the
itself.
universe, right?
And
So-
every living thing in it. Yeah, so yeah, he is the universe on two legs.
And when you look at this Doctor Strange, the classic Ditko era, I mean, he conceived the eternity visual. It's breathtaking. I mean, in that Ditko-esque fashion, in those early Doctor Strange stories.
One thing I've always loved about Eternity, though, looking at the different lettering styles used for all these different characters, and I love the way Morelli does the lettering for the Living Tribunal's dialogue. It's just these giant green letters floating there in space as if they have their own material reality. They take up, his words are so important they actually take up space in the universe. Whereas when all these other grandiose cosmic beings have different special effects in their word balloons, but Eternity just talks normally. For all
That's
his
true,
cosmic grandeur, he's apparently just a guy, as far as his word
He's
balloons
just
are
a guy
concerned.
that's the universe.
Yep.
And I love how Galactus is enraged that they must deign to lower themselves to heed Adam Warlock's directives in terms of their forming a strategy
Yeah.
to combat Thanos.
And I can kind of see where he's coming from. In fact, I bet a lot of people who read this story when it was first coming out saw what he's talking about here, because putting ourselves into the position of someone reading comics in 1991, Adam Warlock had been out of the Marvel Universe for about a decade. And he's probably a bunch of people who had started reading comics somewhere in the course of the 80s didn't even know who he was
Oh, I'd forgotten that. So he hadn't appeared
for a
prior to
long
the story
time.
for
Yeah,
years.
so
Okay.
most of the characters appearing here don't seem to know much about him to recognize him. He's able to convince enough of them that he knows what he's doing
Well, because the Avengers
to follow him.
The Avengers, the more veteran Avengers remember him dying in battle with Thanos.
Seems to
in
have a
those
connection to
stories.
Thor in particular.
So that's again that Marvel 2-in-1 Avengers annual crossover story.
Yeah.
I have to look at the numbers. I forgot them. But
He's able to convince Doctor Strange that he's worth following, and the Silver Surfer. And then, but a lot of people reading this, I wonder to myself if his presence in this story is kind of strange. It's almost, I don't know, he's kind of an ethereal presence here, and this becomes literal when he shows
Well-
up to the battle with Nebula, and Nebula isn't even able to detect
and
him.
he comments that he's essentially detached himself from any kind of sort of
Yeah.
human.
He's outside the
know,
eternal
perspective or
lemniscate
warmth.
loop of destiny.
He just kind of sees himself now as someone who has to fulfill this role to combat Thanos and basically to assume the power himself, which when you hope that's for more benevolent purposes.
Yeah. He comes off as kind of a semi-benevolent non-entity
Yeah.
throughout most of this. He's just this golden godlike figure that shows up and says, I am the solution. And everyone kind of, even Galactus takes some convincing here. One of my favorite panels in the series, also on my awesome panels list, is this panel where Galactus gets torqued at Warlock, decides
Blasts the crap
yeah,
out of him.
Warlock has just called him a fool, and Galactus eye-blasts him, and the surfers, they're screaming, no, at the top of his lungs, and it's kind of an oh shit moment. It really is, because we all assume that Warlock is going to make everything all right, and then he seems to die, but he doesn't have enough. He doesn't seem to be keyed in enough to the material plane just yet that Galactus's blasts can even affect him.
What I also like, and Bill was commenting on this, we were talking about this before the recording, when the She-Hulk was talking about the Vision about previous encounters with Thanos, and Vision's basically saying, we have no chance of beating him. He said the only reason we beat him in the past was because basically Thanos subconsciously was helping us to defeat himself, which I thought was a fascinating insight.
Yes, that is
Into the character.
Possibly the most important insight
Yeah.
to Thanos as a character. And it's maybe another tie to his essential immaturity. That he seems to want to lose. It's like the struggle is more important for him than the goal. Like,
But he doesn't actually believe his own.
all he really
party
wants is
line.
attention, whether it's from Mistress Death or from like all the other kids on the playground. In the end, he doesn't really want to win, because then who's going to play with him after that?
There's two people that bring that up in this book: is Vision and Adam Warlock.
Probably two of the most rational characters in the whole thing. Because he's outside of order and chaos, and he's also outside of good and evil.
Another page that I really enjoy in this particular issue is when the Hulk and Wolverine have their heart-to-heart on the roof.
Yeah, just
That's
two
a
monsters.
really good one.
That's a great page where they're just talking about their role in the order of things and just how they because they fought each other so much, they kind of know each other so well, and the fact that they basically acknowledge that they're both killers.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And the fact that they don't start fighting
Yeah.
is my hat's off to Starlin there for avoiding
No,
what
it's a
has
great
become
page.
possibly the oldest Marvel Comics cliche in the book: two heroes meeting each other and fighting. And it's probably even more cliche in the early '90s than it had ever been.
But I do like that everybody's like, what are those two doing up there? Like, if somebody sneezes, they're gonna fight. Like, we got to go up and break this up right now. Put these guys in two different corners. The page before it where they notice the Watcher is a phenomenal one too. Like, I did feel a sense of. You get that sense of, oh man, the Watcher's here.
And also, Bill, to add to that, the use of panel layout where they show you the eyes.
The eyes, yep.
Of Mephisto and then Thanos. And then Thanos is just death grin at the bottom panel there. The heavens will run red with blood. That's great.
It was always a fundamental problem that I had with the Watcher, though, because he's not supposed to interfere. Every time he shows up, people go, oh, it's the Watcher. That
just means major things are going
Well,
to
yeah,
happen.
it's the harbinger of
That's
doom.
a sort of- that's a
he
sort
is
of
not the cause of the
interference.
doom. He's just a sign that doom is coming.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought maybe the harbinger aspect would even be some sort of interference. It's always bugged
Well,
me.
he
No,
has-
he's just an omen. He's not
But
the doom bringer.
he has
He's-
interfered in subtle ways many times on behalf of Earth. Going back to the classic Galactus trilogy from the FF 48 through 50 in the Silver Age. I love, going back to Danielle's disgust with how immature Thanos is, I love how Thanos then has to create his own his own lover. It's like, all right, the woman you really want is rejecting you, so you go to this poor, dullard who will just do whatever you want. That you really have really no interest in, but you just kind of throw that in the face of the woman you really want.
Fine. Look, I have a new girlfriend now. I made her. Out of nothing.
I'm totally into her now.
She's totally pretty. She's got purple skin like me.
I will point out, though, I'm glad this didn't happen, but you kind of wonder, why didn't Thanos just make Death love him?
Because then it wouldn't be true.
It would have been meaningless.
Yeah.
Yes.
He has
and
to win
I'm
her.
glad that they didn't do that, but it still is like, you're an omnipotent being. You could do whatever you want. You could technically make her love you.
I love that splash page where the heroes are assembled to heed Adam Warlock's strategy. Just sort of a great early 90s image of a lot of these characters with some of the costumes they were wearing at the time, the way they were rendered. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Cyclops in his X Factor costume, for example. The Vision is white.
Yeah, well, this.
Yeah, that one jarred me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't actually know that was the Vision.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really-
well,
I like-
talking of the Human Torch visual we saw earlier, this is during the John Byrne run on the Avengers West Coast.
Okay.
So yeah, the White Vision was his doing. Yeah, he had the government got their hands on the Vision in reprisal for that one time. He went crazy and took over all the computer systems on Earth, took over the whole defense network of the entire planet. So they got him, they took him apart, rebuilt him, kind of lobotomized him a little bit, and turned him into this completely emotionless, colorless,
And we covered that
white plastoid being.
in our Avengers Spotlights because, and again, kudos to Murd for that, especially because the Vision's history is so complicated that I thought we did a pretty good job kind of unraveling all that and explaining it.
Yep,
So-
between that and the Avengers Forever BOMC,
Yes.
I think we hit all the high points anyway.
Actually, I have
And I do mean we because it wasn't just me, sir.
Well, I
I
appreciate
do
that.
have a question on Death because I know every time I've seen her more recently, it's always, the skull, and here she has a face. Was
They
that
go back and forth with
Yep.
that.
Okay.
Sometimes one moment she does, one moment she
Yeah.
doesn't. It's a matter of perception.
There's a classic moment in the Death of Captain Marvel graphic novel where Marvel is dying from cancer.
Yeah, and
She's on the cover, isn't she?
Have you seen? You know what I'm talking
the
about?
statue.
Well, it's not only that. Thanos takes him as he's dying in sort of the ethereal plane to confront death, and Marvel says, "I no longer need the illusion." He moves his hand, and she goes from a beautiful woman to a skull, basically.
Okay.
So they kind of play with that duality that Murd has been talking
Wasn't
about.
there a statue or something that we had at the store for years upon years upon years that we couldn't get rid of?
From the Death of Captain Marvel?
Yeah.
I think so.
Like it vaguely
Yeah.
sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The statue era.
Yeah, the only reference I actually have for Death is from Deadpool, because Deadpool was also in love with Death.
Oh, right. Wasn't there the Deadpool Death Annual back in like
Yeah,
1998?
That was like a thing.
It was the
I've
Joe
never read
Kelly
that.
run.
Oh.
Yeah,
I
so
know that's
that-
a very fun run, the Joe Kelly Deadpool
It's
run.
so much fun.
Yeah. The end of this particular issue 3, the 2-page. Again, I can imagine as a kid how exciting this must be to see all of the assembled heroes, rallying for battle against Thanos, who's standing, arms crossed, defiantly atop the statue dedicated to his mistress, so to speak. Next, conflict on the far side of the galaxy. So it's great space opera.
And the classic cover of issue number 4. Then.
Yeah, I sort of love that cover.
Thanos just crouching there saying, "Come and get me."
I was a little thrown in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. They didn't have Thanos in his classic garb.
Yeah, the costume they had him in was a little busy.
I mean, at the end of Avengers, you could tell it was this costume, the little bit glimpse we saw of him.
Right. It was simple, streamlined.
Yeah. So it was interesting that they made that change. Josh Brolin's voice, I thought, was perfect for Thanos. So I'm glad they got him for that. Again, the sheer power of the gauntlet. He just stops Thor's hammer just in motion, just freezes it. The Submariner, he freezes. He just stops time. Because you said, Bear, one of the gems is time, correct?
Yes,
So, yeah.
definitely.
It's now it's Lim and Perez together doing the pencils in this issue.
All right, but Joe Rubenstein is still doing the inks.
Yep.
So when you called him, as a slip of the tongue, the anchor earlier, but that was kind of an appropriate slip, though, because he is the inker, but he's the anchor that holds visually the whole thing
Anchor often
together.
is, especially if they're doing their job well.
To sort of.
And now we're getting into this 3-issue battle, essentially, where Warlock has initiated a strategy where you realize the heroes are merely pawns in his strategy. They're merely meant as a diversion in many ways, more than anything else. And a lot of this is from Star Fox's point of view. He's like the narrator for the reader. We should mention that Star Fox, many people may not be familiar with him, but he'd been an Avenger for much of the 1980s. So he was a well-established Marvel character.
Yeah, joined during the Stern run, and
at
that
this
he's
point.
been around exactly as long as Thanos has.
Yeah. So
During those couple of issues of Iron Man, into which Starlin had creative input.
Right. That was Iron Man 55, I want to say. First appearance of Thanos. I could be wrong.
I wanted to say 54, but
okay. It's that
easy
area.
enough to find out.
Mr. Deemer's going right to the Overstreet. Thank you, sir. So readers at the time would be well familiar with Star Fox, most likely as a character. And this is just a battle royale. I mean,
You were right, it's 55.
55. Thank you, sir. And that's very much a key Bronze Age issue sought on the back issue market. I'm sure if Pants were here, he'd be waxing rhapsodic about the original art attached to that issue. Miss you, Pantaloons. Now, this issue is where you first see heroes killed because you assume he suffocates She-Hulk and Submariner with that fungus or whatever it is he attaches to their torsos. And they say he is Thanos and his name means death. So he's starting to knock people off here. I love how Doom goes for the gauntlet immediately. Just throws the whole plan in the winds. He just wants the personal power. It will be mine!
He touches it.
Yeah.
He's got his hands on it right there.
But he's cast off. Now, Fire Lord is a formal herald of Galactus. What planet is he from?
He's from Xandar.
Okay.
Yep, the same.
So he's a
place that-
Xandarian.
Headquarters
Okay.
of the Nova Corps.
Yes.
Yeah.
How about, because this is a battle issue. Wolverine actually breaks through Thanos' defenses and plunges both sets of claws into Thanos' chest. I thought the way Thanos dealt with him was especially horrifying and just reminiscent of the power he commands. He doesn't kill Wolverine.
He just takes his bones out.
He transforms the bones into rubber.
Yeah, so he turns adamantium into Nerf.
Yes. And it's pretty gruesome.
Oh yeah, I did want to make one note
Please.
about the title page. Just the way that the title takes up the whole page.
Oh, it's
but
beautiful, yeah.
It's the lettering is transparent, so you can still see the fight scene going on behind it. But cosmic battle on the edge of the universe. The entire height of the page. That's truth in advertising. It's telling you exactly what this whole issue is going to be about.
The Scarlet Witch is disintegrated. She's killed, trying to take on Thanos. Cyclops he traps his head in airless cube. He's asphyxiated. See, that's why the Vision, he tears all his wires out. If they do something like this in the movie, this will shock people because the average reader moviegoer will not have read this story. And if they go full tilt with something like this, that'll really be powerful and will really shake the audience, I think. What do you think, Danielle?
I think so.
Yeah. Because at this point, that's going to be 2 parts, the last Avengers movie, right? They're making it 2 parts.
So I've heard, yeah.
It's called Infinity War.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so by the time they build up to that, the movie-going audience, which will be much of the world, basically, will be very familiar with a lot of these characters in terms of how they've realized in the movies. And to see them be dispatched this easily, I think will be very powerful. I'm interested to see if they take it that way.
And I'm very excited that the directors of the second Captain America movie are doing.
I heard that. I was thrilled. Yeah. It's a team, right? Two guys.
I
Yeah.
think it's brothers or something.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, Winter Soldier is my favorite Marvel movie thus far. So
mine too.
yeah, I'm glad they're directing it. Is Whedon writing the last Avengers movie or not? Do we know?
No, I think they I don't know. They might be writing it.
Okay.
I think they wrote Captain America, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's fitting, of course, that Captain America was the last hero standing. And again, I'll go back to the movie world. You can totally see a battle-scarred Chris Evans, the last hero, standing up like he's really just a normal man, essentially, with just enhanced strength, facing off against a demigod. I can totally see that visual being played out. Supremacy cannot be imprisoned. My divinity is absolute.
Bombast.
It's tremendous.
Yep,
I like how
Starlin's trademark, and it's part of the fun.
I like how Starlin keeps reminding us that Nebula is there, and that she's kind of wandering around this zombie state, but he keeps reminding us that, all right, she's there for a reason, essentially, and he hasn't forgotten her. These are Drax and Philo are dispatched through time into Earth's prehistoric era.
Yeah, back to Earth, of all places.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
And, of course, Taraxia rips off Iron Man's head, and then she's bouncing the helmet like a beach ball.
She also beats Spider-Man to death with a rock.
Yes, she does. Now, let me ask you guys this. If they had drawn this story today, do you think this would be a lot more graphic in terms of how they depict people dying?
Probably.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it's kind of in, like, the background. Like, you kind of see Iron Man's head pull off kind of in the background, and Spider-Man dies. He's like... You don't really fully see him being beaten, and
no, I don't think you would see. I don't think you would see that level of violence up front unless they were particularly trying to shock you.
I think it would depend on who was writing it.
It does.
Really.
It would.
And just to clarify, it was 2 different screenwriters who wrote the Captain America movie, and it looks like they're going to be writing Infinity War.
These are different from the directors?
Yeah, the directors I think are brothers, and then there's 2 other people who wrote it. Just wanted to clarify so the internet doesn't yell at me.
I thought that the death of Nova was the most interesting and creative things Thanos came up with in this issue.
Oh, he turns them into Lego blocks.
Like a child's toy blocks. And then he steps on them just to drive the message home. This is the Richard Rider Nova, correct, Murd?
It is, yeah.
Okay,
recently returning to that role as part of the New Warriors team.
They really like showing panels of him grinning.
Yes.
Thanos grinning. Like, I just noticed that there's a lot of
leering. Yep.
Yeah, he's not without a sense of humor, is Thanos. It's one of the things to love about him.
No, it actually took me quite a bit to get the whole Nova joke, where Nova goes, "Not while I'm around." He goes, "No, not round, square, tiny cubes." Right there we go. Yeah. I would have been at the battle. I would have been like, Thanos, I don't get it. And you explain that joke. And then I would have died.
Notice he casually shatters Captain America's shield, which up to this point we assumed was indestructible.
Well, it had broken once before, but it took the Beyonder, a conflict on Battle World, to do it that time, and it only kind of cracked. And this time it's complete rubble.
That's when he had the laser shield, right, for the first time.
No, that was a lot later.
That comes
Oh,
later.
okay.
That's later.
Yeah, that's like mid to late 90s.
That's
Okay.
very late 90s, I think.
Yeah, Captain post Heroes Reborn, Mark
Yeah.
Waid run.
Now, Murd, was the Silver Surfer trying to rip the gauntlet off Thanos' hand, correct?
That was the gambit there.
Yeah.
Captain America was only going to stand his ground and distract Thanos long enough for the Surfer, directed by Warlock, to come zipping in at super light speed. But even that wasn't quite fast enough. And this is a pivotal moment here, and there is a what-if issue. Listener Chris Brawley has mentioned
Love a
numerous
good what if.
times on the forums that what if number 49, written by Ron Mars, was the what if Silver Surfer had succeeded in snatching the gauntlet
Oh, really?
from Thanos, and what if he had kept it after that, and what would Norrin Rad have made of the universe as its new god? One of my favorite scenes in that is that Thanos demands to know, what if, in this new universe, will there be no death? And the Surfer explains that death will still exist, but rather than being this foreboding hooded skeleton thing that people are all afraid of, she will appear as an alluring guide to a new state of being. And so we see this panel of death changing from the hooded skeleton to this blue-skinned chick with big hair and kind of this swirling piece of fabric around her naughty parts. And then the next panel is a close-up of Thanos' eyes saying, "I like this not at all." So yeah, that's... And Brawlinator goes on to tell us that issue is apparently fetching high prices on eBay right now.
Well, really, have you read the issue? Obviously?
I've had it since it first came
And
out, yes.
what do you think of it as a story?
A lot of fun.
Yeah. Well,
It's a worthy companion piece to this story we're reading right
and
now.
considering that most what ifs are never going to be reprinted, I can see with the current hullabaloo over Thanos how people want to find that issue.
Anything remotely related to Infinity Stones or Thanos.
Right. Now, how about at the end of this issue, the 2-page spread of all the pantheon? Murd, your heart must have been racing.
Ba-bump, ba-bump. Astral conflagration. See, that's Jim Starlin letting his vocabulary loose. I really think he was holding back on the titles of the issues of Infinity Gauntlet compared to some of the doozies he came up with for Infinity War. Thonic maneuvers, nefarious rhapsodies, psychomachia. Digging deep into his OED. Yeah.
Issue 5, I love whenever the Watcher appears and says in a Marvel comic, "I am known as the Watcher." You know the poop's hitting the fan right away, as we were mentioning before.
We know it, and the people in the Marvel Universe
Yes.
know it. That's one of the neat
So-
touches about this story.
I think of the classic Dark Phoenix saga where the Watcher shows up near the end, and you know right away that big happenings are going on. So you gotta love the covered issue 5. How often do you get a Marvel comic where you have Thanos facing off against many of the great
Right.
sort of cosmic entities of the Marvel universe?
He's telling them off. It's
Yep.
the ant telling off the lion, and then backing up his words.
What I love about this issue is that a lot of these sort of iconic cosmic entities, you've seen them many times over the years in Marvel Comics, but to see them all together and then in battle, this might be like a once in a we've never seen this type of thing before in a Marvel comic that I can recall, where they all gather like this and they're engaged in combat and they're trounced by Thanos. So, by the way, I love how they have Taraxia in the classic bondage pose, clinging to Thanos' leg, kind of like Princess Leia with Luke Skywalker in the classic Star Wars. I mean, you've seen that image so many times over and over. You know, the heroic, or in this case, villainous, iconic figure with the woman sort of grasping onto his.
It sort of further shores up Thanos' own immaturity.
Yes.
Because this is the woman he created. This is, in a sense, what he wants or what he thinks he wants.
Well put, sir. Yep.
And what he wants is a Frazetta poster.
What he wants is he wants to be the Frazetta poster.
Okay, just
Frank, draw me. Thanos commands it.
Murd, when I read this page, I thought of you immediately. An interdimensional distortion cascade. Quickly, we must be away from here.
That's the first thing I'd shout in that situation.
Pure Starlin, it's fantastic. But again, Star Fox gives the point of view because he's almost like a flea watching, the galaxy basically being rent asunder by this conflagration. This combat that's going on.
I am glad that Starlin gave him this to do for
Yeah.
us because, well, he's Thanos' brother. He's known Thanos longer than just about anybody.
I also like Mephisto taunting him in the beginning
Oh,
of this
yes.
episode too, where he goes, "Yeah, this is gonna suck. You're not gonna last long."
How about the
Goodbye."
Celestials using a hapless planet as a projectile? Because the stakes are so huge, they're gonna wipe out an entire planet, all life on it, to try to defeat Thanos, and they fail and are destroyed themselves. As he dismisses their offensive. This is great stuff. Murd, Lord Order and Master Chaos. Because again, the duality theme where you have these two entities who. Now, did Starlin create these entities? I forgot.
Pretty sure that he did, actually. And I think the first time that we saw the character, the In-Betweener, I know you've asked me about him before,
Yes,
but
yeah.
I think he was kind of this attack dog / bogeyman who was
Yeah.
going to come and get Adam Warlock after a certain amount of time had passed. So that was the clock that Warlock was running on to defeat the Magus and his Universal Church of Truth. But the In-Betweener was he's kind of like their agent. He's their go-between, no pun
Yeah.
intended. He's their number one hatchet man, and he's the first guy that Thanos goes after in the Thanos Quest miniseries.
Well, he's collecting the gems.
Right.
Yeah.
He has come into possession of Warlock's old soul gem, and when Thanos wrests it away from him and releases him from the prison where Order and Chaos had imprisoned him, then Order and Chaos show up to have their way with the In-Betweener after that.
And they hope to dichotomize the Titan, as the caption boxes indicate here. A divided enemy is an easier foe to deal with. But Thanos, I love this, Thanos refuses to surrender his individuality. Terrific. Now here we have Thanos wrestling with himself because he's starting to question what's going on and why is he doing what he's doing, and then he realizes that love and hate are trying to influence him.
Yeah. In a way, every Thanos story is reducible to Thanos wrestling with himself, really.
Mistress Death, you too betray me? He puts his head in his hand. I offered you the
I
universe.
got the impression she was really on his side to begin with.
Yeah.
So that's when he finally gets over the crush and says, "Okay, fine." Then we have this big scene of all the cosmic entities, not really destroyed, just imprisoned in this
imprisoned,
giant electron shell, basically hovering over the temple, which is now a shrine to Thanos' own ego rather than to his devotion to death.
And Taraxia is clinging to him as ever.
For he is Thanos, he is supreme. He hollers to the uncaring stars.
Clearly, though, Adam Warlock has a strategy throughout this where, you still get the sense that he has a sense of where this is going to go, and he has some kind of anticipation of how it's going to end. That everything is kind of falling into place.
Because he and Thanos are very intimately linked.
Yes. Now, that page where you see Eternity take on Thanos, I mean,
That is so Ditko.
oh, it's beautiful.
Look at the shape of his head.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
That is limb channeling Ditko right there.
Master, my lover, speak to me. And then Thanos, of course, becomes Eternity himself, where he takes on the guise of it. This, I think, is some of the Lim's greatest artwork now. Now that I think about it, because I haven't looked at this in a while.
Yeah. And at this point, he's channeling Starlin himself, because this is based on an old... we'll remember how Thanos coveted the Cosmic Cube.
Right.
And sought that ages ago in the old Captain Marvel series
Yes.
by Starlin. And
Yes.
this is pretty much what happened to him then. And in fact, Thanos even mentions that this is what happened to him when he had the Cosmic Cube. He shed his corporeal dimension and became kind of one with the cosmos.
And we have to remind listeners that they're not familiar with it because they're great books. I mentioned the Death of Captain Marvel graphic novel. The lead up to that is, as you mentioned, in the classic Bronze Age Starlin Captain Marvel stories, Thanos is one of his major nemeses in those issues. And a lot of I think you guys did a review years ago of the Life and Death of Captain Marvel trade.
I think we did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we definitely did.
And that has a lot of those early Thanos stories in it, because Captain Marvel was one of his greatest opponents in those early years. So those are definitely worth reading.
Yeah, that must have been a very early episode, because I know I was not involved with it.
And we're all the poorer for it, Mert. But they remind us that Nebula's still been kind of zombieing around here. And then we have another key turning point in the story. Thanos has so kind of dismissed her in this purgatory he's left her in that she wrenches the gauntlet from his hand. Nebula steps away from the edge of oblivion. Mert, any more favorite panels of yours we've passed over that you wanted to mention at this point?
Oh, actually, no. I think we've been keeping up with it pretty well.
Right.
Yeah, Eternity. My notes say Eternity looms, and that's the Ditko panel
Right.
we talked about. Then Thanos bites his act, and that's when Thanos becomes one with the cosmos.
And then to punish Thanos, Nebula blinks him and Taraxia off into deep space. And then I thought this was kind of bizarre. Thanos is thinking, for had I not the foresight to create Taraxia capable of surviving deep space without the aid of my now forfeited godly powers, I shall miss her. So he had not given her the ability to survive in deep space. So
Or that he'll miss her.
yeah, so she
Like she was alive for 5 minutes. Like,
so she perishes.
I'll
Yeah,
miss the special kind of massage she used to give that part of my ego.
she didn't say much more than
My love.
yeah, my love, master.
Here's Iron Man's head. Yes.
One
Sorry,
gets
I
the-
let her get your glove.
She wasn't built to last.
No.
I think that's kind of by design, if subconsciously. And maybe he would have sacrificed her to Mistress Death at the drop of a hat.
The two
True.
pages where Warlock and Thanos have a confrontation, I think, are some of the best parts of this whole book. Where Warlock basically calls Thanos out on the turmoil within his own psyche, and I think it's really well done. And you just sense that the connection between these two characters, how far back that goes.
It's another one of those Starlin dualities.
And then again, that Thanos is a lot more complicated than you might think. And he says at the end, I will aid you. Because Warlock basically makes him take a good long look at himself. I think it's really well done. I mean, Jim Starlin, other people have written Thanos stories, but Thanos is Jim Starlin's character. Plain and simple. And
to the
you
point
know-
that just about every time nowadays he writes a Thanos story,
Yeah.
he feels compelled to spend a few pages writing off the other writers' uses of the character over the past few years.
So, and in fact, I think in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie credits, I think they do credit him as the creator of Thanos. if I
Well,
remember
they better.
correctly. I would hope so, and hopefully Marvel gave him some money for that too.
Let's not go that far.
Well, hey, we can hope.
Crazy talk.
Yeah, that's not part of the mighty Marvel manner.
So Nebula has the gauntlet, but they keep mentioning that she doesn't have the wherewithal or the experience to really wield it as effectively and as omnipotently as Thanos might, essentially. So she's actually in a position where she could be defeated. I love that final splash page on issue 5. Doctor Strange, Adam Warlock, Thanos, arms akimbo, and the Silver Surfer. But again, an important moment, Nebula only notes 2 of the people with Thanos. She says, with the help of your 2 little friends.
Yeah.
And the Surfer thinks, 2 little friends. Aha.
Yeah, now that you explain that with Adam Warlock, that makes sense. I was wondering what was going on there, why she couldn't see him.
Now, Danielle, the agony's almost over. On to issue 6.
No. I'm sorry. It's just.
My dear, I
Not my
so enjoy
thing.
your opinion. Don't be silly.
Yes, we all enjoy your opinions, Danielle.
Another great splash. Sort of this warped image of Thanos' visage. And, facing off against Nebula. I love how... Has Nebula now transformed the temple to mirror her face?
Yes.
Okay. Fabulous. I like that kind of continuity there. Return the Infinity Gauntlet immediately and all will be forgiven. I might even appoint you my chief consort if you behave yourself.
Oh, yeah, let me know how that goes.
I just want to point out how early 90s her outfit is.
Oh, God.
It
Well,
is
she had that in the 80s, too.
Just
The boots? The
Yeah,
boots
the
are
buckles on the
fabulous.
boots.
I'm just
Absolute-
more thinking, like, why would you put something over the purple bodysuit? The blue thing that I don't understand. Unless that's supposed to be her skin, I don't know. It logically makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, it's a chance to give her sort of a G-string type outfit, which was very popular in the early 90s
Yes, it
female
was.
superhero costumes.
Yes,
The
it was.
G-string over the bodysuit.
Yeah, it makes
So-
no sense whatsoever.
It's the underwear on the outside.
that was, but like look at late '80s exercise videos and
Yeah,
stuff.
it's
So
true.
they all wore that stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
Very true, my friend.
Poor Star Fox is like, can I have my mouth back? Can I go home? Like, you have the glove. Can I just split?
Speaking of the time period, look when Spider-Man, because reality is restored, so Nebula brings everything back, so everybody's alive and back where they're supposed to be. Mary Jane's hair,
Oh my goodness.
tremendous. And
That literally.
That's why this issue was late because they had to draw so much hair.
But you know, in this this issue, Nebula is being. She has no chance if she's going to take on Thanos in a battle of wits. I mean, it's not going to work. She doesn't have the experience. She doesn't have the instinct. She doesn't have the sort of that Machiavellian.
Right. Neither the life experience nor
no.
the experience with wielding cosmic power, which Thanos
Yeah,
has done
so-
3 times now.
So she has no chance. And as you mentioned, Murd, they show us the Soul World where Adam Warlock, because that's inside the Soul Gem, correct?
Right. That is where all the souls that the gem has absorbed or consumed over the years go to
And is that
reside.
like is it like an Eden-like place? Is it a positive place to be, or is it okay?
Yeah, it's not bad.
Okay.
I mean, Warlock was kind of horrified by his
Yeah.
gems urging him to suck more and more souls
Right.
into this paradise. But once he got to spend some time there himself, he discovered that it really wasn't all that bad. He was kind of reluctant to leave, we later learn.
And now we have a 2-page spread of Nebula taking on all the collected might of all of the cosmic beings.
Yeah, now here's one instance when I think having the trade is going to be better than having the individual issues, because I think they made a bad page break here. This 2-page spread is on two. Well, they're not on opposite pages. There's a,
Oh, no.
a
yeah.
right-hand
Here's the
page, and then
trade,
there's a
yeah.
2-page ad for like Marvel logo wear.
Oh, jeez.
Get Spider-Man on a sweatshirt, and then the other half of the 2-page splash is
the
on.
halls with
Really?
Marvel mutants.
That is really bad.
Yeah,
the
I
early
can see
90s
from here
X-Men
that
craze.
Yeah,
they
this
did
is
it justice in
Much
the
better.
trade.
They
yeah.
left the ad out of the trade. You'd think it would be an integral part of the book.
Yeah, some
The
editor
demands
done
of
dropped the
advertising.
ball on that one.
Although, wait a minute, let me see that, Chris. Yeah, they put the seam because it wasn't drawn as one page
It's like a Mad Magazine fold-in.
because the lines don't match up.
Oh yeah, look at that. Yep.
Like you can't, no way you do it. Did the lines match up? So it was
Yeah.
intended to be split, and here it split into the crease is fine. But yeah, that's curious how they did that in the original printing.
I noticed when they're in the Soul Gem, the Silver Surfer is lamenting the fact that Adam Warlock just seems detached. And he says, I still cannot fathom your attitude toward this entire situation, toward all life in general, so detached. And then Warlock responds, emotional nerves cauterized, I suppose. Somehow I manage. It's of no import at the moment. Once again, the universe needs saving. So,
He just blows it off. That's actually kind of scary.
Yeah.
Considering what happens next, that he's just like, you're very cold. You're very detached. And he's like,
Yeah, got to save the
yeah,
universe.
but I'm going to do this.
it all sounds
it's
rather
a thing I gotta do.
mundane when said like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's what psychologists would call flattened affect. Adam Warlock may be on the autism spectrum.
Wow, in the book, in the
Oh, wow, look at that.
it's the middle staple, and there's the glossy page in the middle for it's all ads. So these were the extra special ads that were all glossy in the middle, including the Hook movie.
An advanced D&D.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
All new
Trading
1991 factory set.
And the wonderful 5 Helpless Decades of Marvel Comics
by the late Les
It's a
Daniels.
wonderful book.
As well as the Pirates Nintendo game.
So basically, Adam Warlock, he used the power of the Soul Gem to defeat Nebula soundly.
Right, he gets that gem, which,
Yeah.
as I said earlier, is the one that comes closest to having an intelligence of its own, to turn on the other 5 and get them to stop working in concert, short out the whole thing just long enough for, Nebula's to, it created kind of a short circuit that backfed into her and made her drop the gauntlet.
I love the 2-page spread a few pages before of how not only she defeated all the great,
they're not
cosmic elders,
not just hovering, they're in agony now.
and transfixed into this sort of a stone and these terrible contortions. Galactus's face is just a snarl of agony.
That image of Warlock becoming, when he's screaming, "Nowhere, everywhere, at one with the universe of the Soul Gem." That's another one of my favorite panels.
It's very much that Starlin feel to it.
Yeah, it's got kind of psychedelic poster art vibe to it.
Speaking of that, I would so love to get my hands on one of the early 70s Marvel blacklight posters. God, they're so hard to find.
Well, I do still have the small Eternity, sort of backing board sized.
Yes, those are the greeting card versions of that line.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have that hanging up out in the garage in Stone Harbor.
Honored, sir.
I just need to find a black light to go with it.
So then I mean, the last few pages is really just establishing the sheer power of Adam Warlock, and just what he has at his command. And now he's going to take on the Gauntlet, and the idea is that he will use it for benevolent purposes. Of course, Thanos is enraged because the Gauntlet belongs to him as far as he sees it. But Warlock is just too powerful. And then Thanos refuses to be taken. He says, I would prefer death to imprisonment. I have a thermonuclear device on my person set to detonate in 15 seconds. So Thor casts him back, and then you think that he's destroyed himself.
He was really on top of that.
Yeah. So...
Before he pitches his last little fit, though, we get another expression of the key theme about Thanos' character. Thanos says, "The gauntlet belongs to me," but Adam just waves him off, saying, "You'd only lose it again, Titan. You don't really desire it, so you don't really want this thing anyway, and you always set yourself up for defeat, so just don't bother."
Indeed.
I see the sort of the wrestling comparison that you were making before, too, where this is sort of, like everyone's just passing around the TV title. Falls count anywhere in this galactic battle of wills.
Now, Adam, I'm fascinated in your opinion. What do you think of the way this story ends with Thanos sort of beginning life anew as like this bucolic setting as a farmer,
I think
seeming to find peace?
I think it's the perfect resolution to the story. He's tasted absolute power. He's realized on some level, even if he unwillingly, that it's not really going to give him what he wants. So even though he had to have it wrested away from him, and even though he's not sure he wouldn't seize it again if he were given the opportunity, he's taking some time out to think, to process, to digest everything that he's learned about the nature of omnipotence and about himself. And he comes to the Candidian conclusion that he should just tend his own garden for a while.
And also,
I think it's great.
And
there's an arc for Thanos.
No,
here. That's
I
really
agree.
what justifies this story more than anything else.
And
as great as all the cosmic pageantry and power fantasies are, and as much as I groove on that, in the end of the day, it's a character study of Thanos. It's kind of a love story, albeit a very kind of teeny boppery one, as Danny has pointed out at length, and I think she's got a good point. But it's a meditation on the nature of omnipotence and how it's often at odds with the motives of mere mortals. But first and foremost, it is a Thanos story, and it shows us how he finds some small and fleeting measure of inner peace.
And conversely, Adam Warlock, you sense, now has the burden of that type of power, and as Thanos is cogitating, he basically is saying, I think I came out of the better end of the deal, essentially.
Right. Warlock, I said earlier, this kind of this nagging, insubstantiality or intangibility to Warlock's character in this story. He's there, but nobody, including the characters in the story, get much of a handle on who he is, what he's doing, and why he's really fit to carry this gauntlet. By the end, I think it's because he comes off as such a non-entity, because he doesn't seem to have very clear motives, because he only goes off to save the universe because it's a thing he has to do. That's what makes him the safest possessor for this incredible power.
Now, I haven't read the Infinity War or the Crusade. I will at some point. May I ask, what is the catalyst for bringing Thanos back into the fight, so to speak?
Well,
obviously he doesn't remain a farmer for long. So
well, we don't jump directly from the end of this story to the beginning of Infinity War the next year. In between that, if you want to read the kind of the bridge between those two stories, you should try to find back issues of the Warlock and the Infinity Watch
have a lot of them in the
ongoing
shop.
series. Yeah, I should buy some of them from you. Actually, I only have the first two and a bunch of later ones that tied into the Infinity War and afterward. The story of Adam Warlock's custodianship of the Infinity Gauntlet continues directly into Warlock and the Infinity Watch #1. We haven't seen the last of these cosmic beings, where Eternity makes an appeal to the Living Tribunal again, and so that there's kind of a cosmic court proceeding for Warlock's worthiness, his competence to wield the Infinity Gauntlet. And in the end, he agrees to split up the gems, and that's how the Infinity Watch team comes about. Because he takes the gems and he distributes them to all of his friends. So Drax gets the power gem, Pip the Troll gets the space gem, so he gains the ability to teleport, and he keeps it between his toes. Moondragon shows up, and she gets the mind gem. Gamora, the time gem. Adam, of course, keeps the soul gem for himself, since it's the first one he had a relationship with. And the reality gem is stashed in secret. We don't learn who gets the reality gem until sometime during the events of the Infinity War. The secret sixth member of the Watch. And Eternity further, he presses his suit such that he gets the Living Tribunal to agree that the 6 Infinity Gems will never work in concert again unless Eternity gives his express permission. And that, too, is addressed and undone in the Infinity War miniseries.
I'll have to read them.
It's all good stuff.
Closing thoughts?
Well, since we're talking about related texts,
Please.
We've already touched on the Jim Starlin run leading up to in Silver Surfer, leading up to Infinity Gauntlet and Thanos Quest. I'm just looking at the various crossovers and the aftermath stuff. I mentioned the Warlock of the Infinity Watch, the first issue of that. Silver Surfer, there's something going on there. Crossovers to the series, we mentioned Cloak and Dagger. You talked about, Chris, how Doctor Strange played such an important part in the story. His ongoing series is one of those that crossed over the most with the Infinity Gauntlet event. Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme numbers 31 through 35, according to Wikipedia. Also, a whole bunch of Silver Surfer issues, not surprisingly. Numbers 51 through 59, and issue number 60 is kind of an aftermath thing. A couple issues of Quasar, a couple issues of Hulk, a couple issues of Sleepwalker.
Sleepwalker.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Spider-Man number 17 by Ann Nocenti. So that's...
Thor crossovers?
Yeah, it's... no. It's not an
surprising.
overwhelming number of crossovers for this. I guess they weren't really sure it was going to be such a big success. They more than made up for that with Infinity War and Infinity Crusade. A lot of crossing over going on there.
It just seemed like Thor was such an integral character to this particular story that I was surprised they wouldn't take advantage of that the way they did with Doctor Strange and Silver Surfer.
Well, I guess whatever Tom DeFalco was doing with that book was just too important to be derailed for the purposes of tying into a crossover. Now, though, as promised, we've more than said our piece, I think, but we need to give the listeners their say, since our forum administrator, David D., was kind enough to, or moderator, I guess, was kind enough to put together some advanced talkback threads for people to give their thoughts about the Infinity Gauntlet series before we started recording. Let's hear a couple of their thoughts right now. Starting with another one of our valued moderators, Corey Strode, Solitaire Rose. And he says, I not only read Infinity Gauntlet as it came out, I was working comic retail when it came out. And it was a very big deal. Marvel did a good job of building up to it, with Starlin taking over the Silver Surfer, bringing Thanos back with no explanation, and starting to put things in motion. So you had Starlin returning to the characters he'd done so well in the 70s. George Perez came back to Marvel for the first time since he started work at DC in 1981, and it was also the first big crossover miniseries since Secret Wars 2. So expectations were high. I remember telling the people who ordered for the Schindler's chain, I guess that's what Corey was working for at the time, this would be big, but they were putting all of their energy into X-Men and the like, so they were caught flat-footed by how big this was. The thing I liked about it when it came out was that it felt like a big deal, all capitalized. You knew that it wouldn't end with half of the universe dead, but it felt like something big was going on. I think it also helped that there weren't a lot of tie-ins, so people could jump in buying just the main miniseries. This showed that Marvel didn't think it was going to be a monster hit, or everyone would have started to tie in like they did in the sequel. So that's what I was saying a minute ago, but there not being a whole lot of crossovers. The questions I would have of people who read it after it came out, which is all of us except Brian, I think, since the damn thing was 23 years ago. Was it jarring when Perez stepped off the series?
No.
Yeah, I didn't really think so either, and I think we have to tip our hats to Rubenstein for helping to ease that transition. Did it feel like a big deal when you read it after the fact?
No.
Actually felt more like a big deal after getting some context on it in terms of this discussion right here.
But
This made it a bigger deal than reading it.
Yeah, well, if nothing else, I mean, it introduced the idea of the Infinity Gems and what they can accomplish when gathered together to the Marvel Universe, and it continues to just capture the imagination of readers and creators alike, and filmmakers to this day. And let's see, and Corey concludes by saying, for longtime Marvel fans, the return of Warlock was a big deal since he'd effectively been dead for over 10 years, and people didn't return from the dead on a routine basis at that time. All right, now, and then one of the biggest defenders, enjoyers, and agitators in the name of Marvel Cosmic, Brawlinator on the forum. Marvel has a gift for creating both relatable and realistic superheroes, as well as godlike heroes and villains, vast alien empires, and devices of unfathomable power. The Infinity Gauntlet is one of those rare epic stories that focused on several of these themes. In an era of style over substance, this story had real heft, making it better than almost every other major Marvel event we've had in the last several years. Surprisingly nuanced for the early 90s, and lacking any special chromium covers or gimmicks to bump sales, it was just a big event, and it felt like it. Then he
That's a good point about the covers. They were mad about that at that time. So.
Yeah, I think the Infinity Crusade #1 had a foil stamped cover, but other than that, I think the Infinity Trilogy resisted all of that. He recommends people check out the Thanos quest. Unlike most big events, each fight led into something much bigger and grander, keeping the reader invested in the constant battles. And, well, your mileage may vary, Danny. And none of the shocking deaths were without weight or meaning. I might disagree with that too, depending on what you mean by meaning. I mean, they were dramatic. They helped to heighten the drama. You felt for the characters.
There was
as they
no
were dying.
lasting meaning to them.
Right. Yeah. Beyond the battles, this story displayed smart insights to the key characters, as well as philosophical consideration about life and death. Super cool moments with Thor and Captain America that I won't spoil here because we've already done it. Infinity Gauntlet isn't without flaws, having a few dangling plot threads here and there, as well as a feeling that Starlin had no idea what to do with Doctor Doom. It is true that he kind of got lost in the story after making that big lunge for the gauntlet there. But the high quality of the rest of the story supersedes any shortcomings. It contains nearly everything you'd want out of a major Marvel event about a vast threat requiring the heroes to join as one. An awesome introduction to the Marvel Cosmic I'd recommend to anyone. I thought Ron Lim's artwork was an excellent replacement when Perez wasn't able to finish penciling duties, leaving the project partway through. Editorial wisely chose Lim to finish the book, although Perez offered to remain on as the inker over Lim's cover art for the remainder of the miniseries. And if you look at the covers, I think they are signed by both Perez and Lim. Hardly noticeable in my opinion, but I was already a big fan of Lim's artwork along with Perez's. Was anyone else bothered by the penciling change? I think most of us say no to that.
Nope, not at all. I think some of Lim's greatest work, actually.
With weekly books like Batman Eternal, we're probably all very used to this sort of arrangement by now. Was anyone else introduced to Marvel Cosmic through this book, or were you already into the Cosmic Universe material before this came along? Well, for me, I was introduced to Marvel Cosmic by the sequel to this, so...
I was into Marvel Cosmic going back to reading old Fantastic Fours from the Silver Age as a kid. I mean, that's what got me into it initially.
Yeah, that's kind of the source and wellspring of all Marvel Cosmic.
Yeah, and I didn't really get into Marvel Cosmic until Abnett and Lanning.
All right.
Slot and all red Silver Surfer.
Yeah, I do love that book.
So say we all.
Yep.
Well, maybe not all of us.
No, we do not.
So say everyone whose opinion counts.
You're just wrong.
Let's see.
A debate for another time,
the
no
best
doubt.
you can do, Dan.
Yeah. All right, let's see.
gonna take out-
Dubba T, number 138. I read the 6-issue mini as it was coming out, but I hadn't read the stuff leading up to it in Silver Surfer. Being a fan of the original Thanos versus Warlock stuff, I was excited. Since it was only 6 issues, I held off reading any of them until the final issue came out. Loved the Perez artwork and also enjoyed Lim's stuff. The only bad thing I can say about the series is how, thanks to it being such a hit, we got 2 follow-up miniseries, both of which were not nearly as good as this one. I will debate you on that one, Newt, because I really do love the Infinity War story. Having read or reread both Gauntlet and War in recent years, War still holds up better for me. There's just more meat on its bones, more stuff going on. It's more than just the character story of Thanos. War offers you that, plus also the Megas, so it's kind of the dichotomy of Adam Warlock's psyche. Plus there's the Dark Doppelgangers, which are a really cool thing to have hanging around a story. Yeah, I will defend Infinity War till my last breath. Here's Mr. Cosmic. He says, "This series sucked and I hate everything about it." Wait, no, I love it. I was reading comics when this came out, but I didn't know anything about it. The only comics I had access to were the ones my local gas station and drugstores carried on the spinner rack. This wasn't there. I was limited to Spider-Man, Batman, etc. What I did have were Marvel trading cards, and they were my window into the wider Marvel universe. In 2001, I got back into comics, and a coworker happened to be a big comics geek. He started telling me about the Infinity Gauntlet, Thanos, Warlock, Galactus, Quasar, all these names I recognized from my trading cards. In one story, I went home that evening and bought the issues off eBay. He was in love right away, he says. The art, the story, it was a baptism by fire into Marvel Cosmic, and now he's named himself after it. From there, I went on a binge, buying and reading everything I could find dealing with Marvel's cosmic characters. Okay, and here's Fred from out in Colorado, Fredzilla. This is my first time reading this story. Okay, so another newcomer's perspective. I remember seeing this come out when I was a young teen. I enjoyed the look of the Silver Surfer and tried to get into the Marvel Cosmic stuff, but just couldn't find a place to latch on to. Let's see. I don't know if it was Perez's art or the red sky nature of the conflict, the wiping out of half the universe's population, but I really got a Crisis on Infinite Earths feel from the first several issues. This isn't a bad thing, but I just felt like it would be a good place for Marvel to reset their universe if they'd wanted to. However, it would have seemed like a cheap knockoff of DC's Crisis, which was, as of 1991, only like 6 years ago, after all. Regardless, I felt as though this was an important story at the time, and looking back on Marvel's history, especially its movie universe, this is an important book. So, good point there, Fred. And he's not sure he would have noticed the transition between Perez and Lim either. Okay, Hellsfire. He writes, "As much as I love this story, I think people tend to forget the most important part. Sure, everyone remembers the cool battles, but they forget the ending. Thanos is changed by the event and has given up on being evil. He's found a kind of inner peace and starts on the road to saving the Marvel Universe more times than not. He's grown as a character. It's a shame that all the recent non-Starlin stuff kind of negates all this for no reason except they might have wanted to align it more with the movies. Doesn't help that they were also just terrible stories. Might as well have had Thanos rob a bank again." And a couple of people post an image from an old comic of Thanos flying away in a helicopter with his name printed on the side of it, while the cat is trying to catch him.
Wow.
Greer Nelson.
I don't know. I forgot about that.
I want to say it was in an issue of Spidey Super Stories.
Okay, we'll have to check on that.
And the thread just kind of falls apart after that because Thanos in a helicopter just trumps any and all arguments.
It even says Thanos on it. That's pretty spectacular.
Apparently that was recently referenced in a Deadpool story because
it's that ridiculous.
Thanos shows up in the Thanos helicopter and Deadpool climbs in with him.
That might be my new favorite thing.
Thanos copter.
Adam, any closing comments?
Well, I guess I promised earlier a little bit of compare and contrast between this and Crisis.
Go for it.
And, well, you know, for one thing, the Infinity Gauntlet, well, as Fred said, this is not, it never was intended to be a story that was going to redo Marvel's publishing universe, clean up its history, or any of that stuff. It was never really meant to have any permanent consequences.
That may be coming shortly, though.
Well, yeah, true enough, if you've heard about this Secret Wars thing that's brewing. Yeah, so this is kind of topical. But the only real change that this made to the Marvel Universe was it introduced the concept of the Infinity Gems and the omnipotence that can be gained by any character that assembles them. And it reintroduced Warlock, and his Infinity Watch team of characters. But beyond that, the whole story pretty much happened, figuratively and literally. It was all a product of Thanos' imagination, and it all went away as soon as Nebula wished it away. So the whole story... So I guess that's a similarity to Crisis. In a way, part of it didn't even happen because of a time loop thing. But yeah, its raison d'etre is very different here. It's intended to be like a study in omnipotence and of Thanos in particular, that character. It privileges character and theme much more than plot and setting, which is what Crisis was all about. It was all about taking the time and space in which DC Comics take place, and through the medium of this story, this very carefully designed sort of tactical weapon of a story to change the landscape of the DC universe in time and space, hopefully for the better. Infinity Gauntlet never tried to do anything like that, never pretended to do anything like that. So, yeah, it's... But really, I think the most major difference is one of tone. We've said several times over now that this is more character-driven. It engages with the residents of the Marvel Universe on a somewhat more intimate level than Crisis did with DC characters, although we did get some emotional moments from the point of view of DC characters in Crisis, but Gauntlet is more about that. It's more central to what's going on in Infinity Gauntlet. I mean, even Perez's artwork is a little different here. I mean, and I don't think it's just that his craft had progressed so much in 6 years that his style looked differently. I think he was trying visually to tell a different kind of story. This is more of an inner crisis, a crisis of the mind. It's as much about Thanos and what's going through his mind, his high school crush on death or whatever, as it is about any of the grand-scale destruction that's happening. That's all an external manifestation of what's going on in Thanos' mind, and that's what Starlin's storytelling has really been all about ever since the 70s. The inner conflicts, the journey to the center of the soul. It's the journey that's more important than the destination. Contemplation is more important than conclusion. And Crisis was absolutely not that. That was all about what happened at the end. That's where going from point A to point B. Infinity Gauntlet was much less that. If Crisis was this big widescreen IMAX cosmic disaster movie, this is theater. All right, this is a kind of destructive cosmic grand guignol psychodrama. This is space opera in more than one sense, and so I think it's for doing what it does as opposed to what Crisis does. It's enjoyable in a different way. Even if it doesn't, leave many lasting consequences for comics historians to talk about for years to come, it's still good to read for that reason.
I'm going to be bold here, and I think I can speak for everyone I saw. I don't think any of us can add anything to summation like that. Murd, outstanding.
We should just end the show right now.
I take a humble bow before you and
well done,
retreat to the wings.
Well done.
Well, does anybody else have anything else to say, though?
No.
There's no need.
Not
Adam, there's
really.
no
I
need
think
to.
you summed
There's
it
no
up
need to.
perfect.
All right, then
no
I
need
guess
to.
there's nothing more to say from my end then. This episode of Comic Geek Speak was brought to you by Scribd. Go to scribd.com/comicgeekspeak for a free month trial to try out their digital comics recommendation services and also give us a little bit of kickback help while you're at it. And this episode was also brought to you by Geek Nation Tours and their special New York Geek Tour package coming up the second week of October of this year. Soundboard. Try to work two mouses at the same time.
You shouldn't have to touch this one.
Well, see, I temporarily stopped the recording until I could get myself back to the soundboard.
Because no, I'm still recording the video because I'm expecting it to all be
Professionalism out the window, folks. This is old
Fix it in
school
post.
Comic Geeks. We've been doing this for 10 years. Did we mention that?
It's just, you're seeing the behind the scenes, what happens in between the panels.
Yeah, and Shane is not here, so I'm not used to doing the ending contact information, so I'm having to call that up. Okay, so I've got that.
Something about visiting a forum, calling, leaving a message, Twitter, Facebook. Yay!
Danny got it.
Music.
It's all good. ComicGeekspeak.com.
Yeah.
All right.
Look at that.
You can visit us at comicgeekspeak.com, as it has already been mentioned. You can email us at comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. You can visit thecomicforums.com to participate in the talkback discussion related to this episode. Your feedback is very valuable to us. We'd like to know what you're thinking about what we're doing. Or you can search for this episode on YouTube and let us know what you think of, the visual dimension of all that we've been doing. Comment on Chris's t-shirt and my t-shirt. Because Thanos is so freaking metal. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, the number there is 267-702-6642. You can follow us on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook. We give a special thanks and shout out to everyone who's donated money over the years, including the donors who made our new video setup possible. We really appreciate it. We couldn't do this show in audio or visual dimensions without your help. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
Laser beams, opinions like the seasons on everything you read in comics, movies, games, toys, artists, comic geeks speak, comic.
Never mind, none of that recorded.
But I'm still recording. And this is where I'm going to end the video. Thanks for watching.